there I can see. We don't have anyone else. Oh, excuse me. Okay, thank you. Welcome along then to today's committee meeting. We have apologies of, at this point, nobody, I don't think. Yeah. Councillor Laws is not here, but I don't think he's an apology.
Carmen is.
Edward?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
Edward.
so Edward Ellison is an apology for today. We may
Could we accept Marion's apologies for lateness in case she turns up and we can readjust it?
Yeah, and Councillor Laws as well, potentially for lateness. Yeah.
And you got Carmen.
Oh, and Carmen, sorry.
Carmen is an apology.
Okay.
Happy to move.
Okay, thank you. Seconded?
Yeah.
All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Confirming the agenda then, no extra items to be added at last minute? No. Thank you, we'll confirm that. Conflicts of interest, anyone like to advise of any of them now? Otherwise, yes.
I'll be leading the last item.
Sure, thank you. Anyone else? No. Public forum. We have actually got a public forum today. So we have the Dunedin Trails Network Trust and some representatives are here from them, and also I think some supporting organisations. So if you'd like to come forward over here, you're welcome to have a seat. And if you'd like to introduce yourselves, that'll be great. Just down there. You're welcome to stand or sit, whatever you're comfortable with.
You should be around here.
Yep, that's going. Thank you. Welcome.
Lindsay Day is going to come a little bit late and speak for the Trails Network. But I'll begin. Kia ora, ko Mandy Takawingoa, ko ka puka tamahaka tamanga, ko Waitati te awa, ko Waitati aho. My name's Mandy Mayhem Bullock. I live in Waitati. Before I begin, I'd just like to acknowledge Mana Whenua. It's the owners, the people of this land. I'm here as a community member and as an elected member of the Waikouaiti Coast Community Board and also a member of our Coastal Communities Cycle Group. I'm mainly speaking as a community person today. First of all, I'd like to applaud ORC for being visionary and taking leadership with your integrated trail network. This is a great report and many communities have been asking for someone to take the lead and you've stepped up with a vision. It's my request today that the Oamaru to Dunedin Trail be added to the Regional Transport Plan. Imagine not only linking trails from Dunedin, Cluthagold to Waihola, the Central Otago Rail Trail to Middlemarch, and then a northern coastal connection too. With our Dunedin Airport so nearby, domestic visitors will come and travel through, bringing revenue to all of our rural communities, making them more sustainable. Cyclists are going to stop, they're going to have a bite to eat, a bed to sleep. They're travelling slowly, unlike other tourists. They're going to take detours and adventures along the way. So I see so many positives. Local tourism, the Dunedin resident and Otago residents exploring their own patch. And it seems after COVID that the new face of tourism is actually more than 80% local, and the potential local economy boost could be several $100s per day per visitor. Tourism, however, is just the icing on the cake. Active commuter transport, safe, accessible trails for the young and old, increasing health and well-being. Local lifestyle and recreational. It will make Otago, the Waitaki and Southland regions a wonderful place where people can commute and recreate in a healthy way, increasing mental and physical well-being, fantastic for young families and for our ageing population. The recreation benefits alone will be enormous, as demonstrated by shared harbourside pathways. not only here in Dunedin, but around the nation. The ability to get out into nature, to access our waterways for recreation and also restoration of biodiversity. And the ability also to combine with habitat restoration along the corridor of the trail. I'm here also today to mention our group, a coastal community cycle project that Emily's going to tell you a little bit more about. Briefly, the Cycle Community Connection project is about accessible transport, about safety and connecting our local communities and commuting. This isn't a new idea or a dream, but in light of recent times, it's even more important that our future focus should be environmental long-term projects for our community. My community board supports this, and we intend to do this by continuing to lobby at a local level. We've been liaising with Kiwi Rail and NZTA, writing submissions. I'm here today hoping to get in the land transport plan, helping locals on the ground, whatever it takes to get our people going somewhere safely on bikes. They said to me during the lockdown, you know, they drove round and round and round the community, but without going up and over giant hills, there was nothing connecting them to the next community. So our focus initially is two worthy projects, Waikoiti to Karatane and also Warrington to Waitati, so that our own, the communities that I represent on the community board will have a more sense of connectedness and purpose when they get out on their bikes. They can go just that little bit further. These are flat lands. It'll be accessible to mums with prams, to people in wheelchairs, to nanas on bikes too that don't want to get out on the highway or cycle over Kaupuka Taumahaka into the city. Creating a cycleway, as I mentioned, will also bring economic gain to our rural communities, improving transport options, more efficient integrated transport network, improving people's health, economic and social outcomes, and community livability. All so worthy in my mind, and these things will inevitably happen, I'm positive, but the sooner we can get these things happening, the better. Thank you very much. I'll hand over to Emily now to talk a little bit more about our cycle network.
Thanks, Mandy. Kia ora koutou. I'm Emily Cooper, a Waikoiti resident and a member of the working group established this year to facilitate the development of a two-part cycleway connecting Waikoiti to Karatane and Warrington to Waitati, with the long-term aim to see the full Oamaru to Dunedin Trail as a reality. The Coastal Communities Cycle Connection Facebook group has 301 members, and we have held 2 well-attended public meetings. There is overwhelming support from locals in these areas for such a project. Our vision is to connect the northern coastal communities by developing a safe route for cyclists and pedestrians. Currently, State Highway 1 is the only route between these settlements, which are closely connected in every other way. For example, the distance as the crow flies between the outskirts of Waikoiti and Karatane townships is only 2.5 kilometres, and there is a similar distance between Warrington and Waitati. The social and business lives of the residents are entwined, and there is a huge amount of driving to and fro as residents conduct their daily lives. Not only is there no option to cycle or walk, there is also very little option to take the bus. We believe these 2 sections of cycleway are urgently required to offer residents a choice in how they get around. They can form the pioneer sections that would eventually be extended to form an Oamaru to Dunedin Trail and fill that gap in the regional network. The benefits of such a trail in terms of tourism, lifestyle.
Come forward, Lindsay.
That's Lindsay.
I'm assuming. No, yeah, down. Sorry, excuse me, Mandy.
The benefits of such a trail in terms of tourism, lifestyle and wellbeing have been clearly laid out in Susan Lilly's report and the feasibility study commissioned by Dunedin City and Waitaki councils. We have already taken steps to progress this project, and we have the backing of the Dunedin Trails Network Trust. The prospect of the IRC getting behind it is extremely encouraging and galvanising. A preliminary route has been identified by designer and engineer Hamish Seaton that would give trail users access to our waterways, being areas of high community value, including Blueskin Bay and the Waikawaiti River. Grassroots community groups such as Waitati Amenities Group and Hawkesbury Lagoon Society have pledged their support and expertise to assist stakeholders to take this opportunity to enhance the biodiversity of the areas along the trail. Information about the project has been shared with local iwi, Kati Huirapa Runaka ki Puketaraki, and Runaka manager Suzanne Allison has attended one of our public meetings in support. A preliminary assessment of the estuarine habitat that would be affected by a cycleway going in along Blueskin Bay has been undertaken by Professor Keith Probert. We also support ORC provision for public transport to fill gaps in the trail network, and for this to happen now. At the weekend, residents in the communities north of Dunedin are effectively cut off from the city and from each other, unless they have a car. There is no weekend or evening bus service for these 5,640 people, or 6,981 people if you include Palmerston and Waihemo. Compare that to the extensive cycling, walking and bus options available to residents of the Otago Peninsula, for example. Roughly half that figure at 3,579 people. In summary, we would like to voice our wholehearted support for this strategy of the Otago Regional Council to support development of an integrated regional trail network, particularly funding to support a project manager for our trail and construction investment. We applaud the initiative and we look forward to working with you to facilitate our shared vision of safe, connected communities. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. So Lindsay, I'm assuming. So sorry, but we have standing orders with regards to public forum. So generally for one group, it's 5 minutes to present. And I think you've been represented here by a few different groups, because you've got the community board and you've got the Dunedin Trails Network Trust. So we've actually given a bit of leeway and we've gone to the 10 minutes, which is allowed for more than one group. So we've already got to that time, but Lindsay, if you'd like to say anything particularly.
I move that we extend
I'm happy to second.
Okay.
by 5 minutes
Sure.
There's three groups here.
Thanks. Sounds good. All in favour? Against? Carried. Welcome.
I endorse 100% what's just been spoken about. The fact that I was late here to start the process is probably beneficial, because what it does is very clearly show that there's a lot of groups like the Waitati group that are around the region who are looking towards formulating a collective approach towards tracks and trails. Our trust has been set up around the principle of how can we help these people, and I applaud the report that's been done, which I already saw yesterday, which clearly delineates the opportunity that's there, the support that this council could give towards it, and the benefits to the population at large. If we look at the other parts of New Zealand and what they're actually doing in this regard, we are lagging behind. While we have Central Otago Rail Trail going well, the Dunedin and its cumbrance areas is actually well behind. When we realise the tourism impact that's going on around the country, we're not able to, in Dunedin at least at this stage, clip the coupon to any great extent. While I realise that your area covers greater, but in Dunedin alone we do not have that ability. So we are responding to the report by saying it's extremely well done. While it's desktop reporting, it still highlights very clearly, and I hope you all had a chance to read the report. And we'd like to support in some shape or form what's been proposed within the report itself. Our group is small, but our objective is initially to provide a plan or map planning that shows where the tracks and trails are, improving the access to people that come to town and those people within town who could benefit from health and wellbeing, getting out amongst our whānau learning a little bit more about our heritage, our Māori heritage, our gold rushing heritage, and generally improving their lifestyle. At the same time, looking very clearly towards commuting cycling as a way of removing the carbon footprint, and also looking very clearly at biodiversity and how we can protect our waterways and add value to it. The groups that are out there working now are doing that. They just need some coordination and some support. I think we've used the philosophy that we look a bit like Sport Otago in delivering sport to our region, and maybe this trust could be doing the same for recreational cyclists, commuters, walkers, and the odd horse here and there. So I think the report's very well done, and we would be very keen to work as we can. Hopefully I've only used 3.5 minutes.
Thank you. Okay, at this point we can have some questions of clarification from councillors. Anyone got anything they'd like to ask? Councillor Scott.
In relation to the concept Oamaru to Dunedin Trail, is there any momentum that's been established there? I mean, you've talked from working Dunedin North. Obviously Oamaru have some type of track record in terms of Alps to the sea. Mayor Kirch's, I think, is engaged. Is there any momentum there heading south, or is it basically a relatively empty piece of paper at this point?
Well, I think, there's a very extensive feasibility study that's been done.
Okay.
Which was commissioned by Waiteki and Dunedin Council jointly.
Okay. Dunedin City Council.
Dunedin City Council, yeah. And Waiteki Council voted to, I think, endorse that study and to commit to the next stage. They obviously have experience with Alps to Ocean, and they could see that's a good thing to do. And Dunedin City Council, on the other hand, didn't agree with the contents in terms of perhaps the costing.
That's right.
That was shown in it. But having said that, they are still positive about it, and would like to see it happen. Just perhaps need a bit more work done. So where we come in is we would like to get to the trail design, get those consents in place, and just really assist the Dunedin City Council, ORC, anyone that can help to get it happening.
Great, thank you.
Councillor Wilson, and then Councillor Laws, I think.
Just to check your aspirations, and I have read the Oamaru to Dunedin report, and it was probably a gold level cycle trail, but are your aspirations that where you can get off road, great, but there may be some connections, and you've talked about Wakawiti to Karatani, which I don't actually think the state highway is the worst bit there. It's a small bit to Karatani itself, which is so narrow and awful when you've got cars passing, there's nowhere to go. So I just want to get in my mind, in that, is it, as it goes into, if it went into the regional land transport plan, that it may just be a simple widening of the area that's sealed that cyclists can ride on a road but in a safe way, or is it that you actually want to have all of it to be off-road trails?
Well, I think that would be a solution. Ideally, it would be great to have it off-road, and I think NZTA would prefer that it was off-road. That's better for safety. Yeah. That's what we're really concerned about. And obviously there's fantastic opportunity once you've connected up those two lots of communities. There's also opportunity to connect them, overlap the coast road, which is just so stunning. And when we did a drive around with Hamish Seaton, who actually designed the Alps to Ocean Trail and several others around the country, he said, he sort of measures a trail, the quality of the trail on how many photo opportunity stops there are along the way. And I think keeping it off-road is ideal. And New Zealand Rail are really keen to assist. So it's encouraging. It doesn't we need funding for a project manager. The expertise is out there. It's just a matter of getting it all going. So
thank you. Councillor Laws, did you have your hand up? He's on Zoom.
I did.
Oh, great. Okay.
My apologies. My apologies at the start of this meeting, but I've read the report that I think it is related to your submission today. And on page 6, it identifies the network gaps of Waitaki, Dunedin, Clutha and Queenstown Lakes. The obvious question, and we're obviously, as you know, going to be discussing it later on this afternoon, and therefore have to confront an interesting philosophical question about whether or not we become proactive, having always been a pretty reactive organisation. I'm interested in the responses in terms of funding and the long-term plans of those 4 bodies, and what responses you've had at all from Waitaki, Dunedin, Clutha and the QLDC as to whether or not they'll be putting in, or they have indicated to you they're putting in any funding to those aims and projects in their own long-term plans. Have you had any discussions along those lines?
On a personal basis, no, I have not. But I believe each of the individual people who are doing the networks have had some of those discussions. I think you're quite correct in making this comment about the long-term sustainability. That's part of any good management plan, and having the buy-in of councils, along with the population at large, will determine how successful those ongoing costs can be covered. That's some area that we will be looking at as we work with each of the 7 groups that we've identified.
Okay, we've got to 25 minutes already, but we've got Councillor Calvert with her hand up. Let's make that one of the last questions.
Probably a quick question. There are people with expertise in trails that we've already got. Why do you think it would make sense to get somebody new doing that, rather than if we wanted it pursued to start off with somebody who already had expertise to do that and just sort of hang it off the side expertise-wise of the rail trail in Central Otago or the DCC things that have been happening?
There are a small number of people with expertise around building tracks and trails, and we will be using exactly the same people. We are working with them now, trying to ascertain policy around how we should develop the whole network. So there are very few people. We don't intend to use different people at all.
Project manager isn't really project manager. It's a...
Well, the area of a project manager is far more detailed than somebody doing a plan for the project itself. The project manager, to actually help the organisation build the infrastructure requirements to make it all work, will require resources.
Councillor Malcolm, you asked the question.
Look, just simply around the costings, and having been intimately involved in the start of Alps to Ocean, and probably reasonably knowledgeable about the costs of it now, which are quite different figures. But so, what's the initial funding that you need to kick things off, and what are your anticipated costs of, say, these first 2 stages?
That I couldn't answer because the feasibility study which was done was for the Dunedin Tongaroo as a whole. They did break it down a little bit, but I don't have those figures in front of me, and Dunedin City Council rejected them anyway. So it would need obviously as part of establishing a new project, the costings would have to be done afresh. You know, there's a bridge would probably have to be built over the Waikato River. Be extensive work along Blueskin Bay to put in possibly even a boardwalk scenario along there. So those 2 sections would be the most expensive sections, basically. I would imagine, from what I understand, in terms of infrastructure. But in a way, it would make sense to do them first and then connect up the smaller bits.
So to get to figures around the costings of that and the feasibility of actually going ahead with the project, you're looking for a project manager to start that off? Is that, So have you put a number on that?
We do have some figures, so it could be $100 per metre if it was just going to be a heartland type trail that was just compacted gravel.
No, so to get that kicked off, you just want some money.
We put a proposition to the DCC suggesting that a figure of $50,000 would be an appropriate level to employ somebody for, it might not be full-time,
Yeah,
to start the project
to get
off.
it kicked off. Yeah, then the figures of it would come out from there.
Thank you. That would details that still need ironed out. Yep. Okay.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for coming along and presenting to Public Forum, taking time out of your days to come and talk to us, and for the passion that you've got for projects like this. We need people in the community giving up their time to make things happen. So thank you for all of that.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, on to the next part of the agenda, which is confirmation of the minutes. Thank you very much. We have them there from the 12th of November. Does somebody care to move them as true as accurate? Kate, and seconded by Councillor Forbes. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Okay, we have action register there as well, which...
Moved to noted.
Yeah, nobody wants to raise anything particularly from them. No. Moved then to be noted, seconded to be noted, all in favour, against, carried. On to the first paper then, which is LTP consultation proposal on integrated environmental management. Welcome, Gwyneth and Sylvie. I'm going to leave it up to you to introduce the purpose of the paper and its significance for us here today. Thank you.
Kia ora. Hello, so this paper is about a proposal that we want to put forward as part of the LTP 2021-2031. So we discussed it at a couple of workshops, and it's about how we can achieve integrated catchment management as a council and what's our role. We are proposing to have it as a matter of significance, so to include it into the consultation document that will go out in March next year. And we are also proposing the options that we could put forward as part of this consultation. So while discussing this paper, what we are seeking is a confirmation that you want to see this proposal going into the LTP, and then confirmation that you want it to be included into the consultation document, and then making sure that the options that we have put forward are suitable for public consultation in your view. But at this stage, we're really about how we frame the options. We're not looking for a decision on the options, because that will come after public consultation. So that's basically this paper, and I take it all as read.
Thank you. Anything else to add to that, Gwyneth? No? Okay, thank you. So out of Council's own workshops, we've identified, I guess, integrated catchment management as an approach that could work really well for tying a number of elements of the Council's work together, and also engaging in a really meaningful way with community, for community to own issues and to drive outcomes. So this is a model for achieving those things. Like we've said, there's some options there which could be put out to the LTP consultation, and as we said, we're going to decide whether or not those are the options, and I suppose fundamentally whether this is one of the items of significance that we'll be consulting on. So I'm going to open it up. Councillor Wilson.
To questions, I presume, at the moment? Just questions?
Oh, sorry.
I presume.
Yes, let's have questions for a while. That sounds good, yeah.
I was intrigued by some of the statements in the report, which probably aren't fundamentally important, but I think there was a time when this regional council did a heck of a lot of integrated catchment work, and to say that historically it hasn't, I think, is incorrect. I just note that. But the question I have is, when you talk about integrated catchment, and you just actually said it yourself, it's the council doing things, I had understood it, and maybe I've missed out, is that we're going to have catchment groups wanting to understand and be part of the story as well, and work with the council and mana whenua to get to these points. It is a collaborative?
It is about a collaborative approach, yes. So what we are proposing is, as option 2, is to have ORC facilitate and coordinate the discussions. There will be catchments where there are major catchment groups, which are already doing some of this work, so it's coordinating and working with them. In other catchments, we don't really have the same framework, so we'll need to adapt to the context of each catchment. Yeah. But yes, it's about making sure that we share the information, that everyone has a set of shared objectives which are compatible, and it's about coordinating and facilitating discussions, not necessarily delivering, or it's not telling what people have to do. It's about
I get that, and so that's the starting off point, and working to, I think, get to some solutions if there are issues. And can I understand the LTP part of this is the money that goes in there, and what that money can be used for? You've talked about facilitation. Just wanting to check that actually if the group needs funding for science or for survey work or things like that, is that our role, or is those groups, is that something we sort of push aside?
This paper doesn't cover delivery of those actions. It covers the process by which we would go about coming to an integrated catchment plan for each of the FMUs. So once we've established that and we're clear on what the actions are amongst everyone, it could be someone other than OIC that delivers it. It could be OIC that delivers it, or it could be some sort of joint arrangement. But we're not trying to preempt or put into an LT budget actions, well, I guess funding for actions that we don't know what they are at this point.
But we will fund the development of a plan, so we have to. Sometimes that plan will need science, though. And or measures or something.
Yep. So that I think the last paragraph of the report talks about an assumption we're making at this stage that I guess that underlying knowledge and that science to support it is will be undertaken in terms of whether we go ahead with option 1, 2, or we don't go ahead at all. And we are making an assumption that it's the same level of work that's required in terms of resourcing to do that. So in terms of trying to build the knowledge base that would allow the integrated catchment planning to go ahead, we're making an assumption that the knowledge base will be the same whether we did integrated catchment planning or we continued as our current mode of operations, where we're not doing it necessarily as an integrated approach. So the assumption is that the resourcing levels for that underlying development of that underlying knowledge is no different.
Okay, we have Councillor Calvert, Scott, then Hobbs.
Reading on page 13, is an integrated catchment management an issue of significance? Or under 19A to F. I don't see that it falls under any of those things, and I'm wondering how you have in your heads brought it under those, because I don't think people could tell whether we'd done it or we hadn't done it. So when it says the extent of any consequences or impact on Otago residents and ratepayers, how would they know that we'd done this? It's different from what we were doing, because I thought all year we were heading towards more integrated catchment plan.
The question, what are the outcomes?
Yeah, the question is what outcomes would allow us to understand this to be significantly different from what we're already heading? Why is it significant?
Yeah, so under this paper, we're checking against the criteria that are set under the significance and engagement policy. And one of those criteria is about the level of public interest likely to be generated, so that's B, within the region or New Zealand, and we believe that there will be public interest around that subject because of the importance of fresh water for the region. Which one was? And was the other one? Oh, and a high degree of interest among stakeholders, including catchment groups. So it was more around the public interest than the impact on ratepayers or impact on.
Sorry, what I was trying to tease out was the difference between their interest in the direction we're currently been signalling, and their interest in doing any of these things, which doesn't seem to me to be different enough for them to be interested in the difference rather than.
Is the outcome developing catchment plans for each?
Yeah, I think the outcome is
community.
about being much more transparent and engaging much more with the community and making sure that the way we engage with the community responds to their is more meaningful for them, because we are talking about their place, we are talking about all the issues that they're facing in terms of biodiversity, biosecurity, freshwater, etc. So it's how we work with our communities and how we make sure we engage with them, communities and stakeholders. I think that's really the outcome, and making sure that we build this common set of objectives that everyone works towards.
Separately from what we've already been talking about putting in the long-term plan, which seems to be doing this. I just trying to, I don't understand the difference between the other things we're doing that quite clearly signal us getting in amongst the community and doing these
Could you give
things.
me a specific example of what those other things are? Because this is, I mean, the point of this paper is that we've had this discussion around integrated catchment planning in workshops. We haven't had it in a public forum, hence why we're bringing the paper. So we have had a number of conversations about integrated catchment, but that's not in a public forum. So this is what we're trying to do with this paper, is bring that conversation into the public forum and then make a decision around significance, because you can decide that you don't think it is a matter of significance and therefore you don't want to explicitly consult on it in the LTP. That's what this paper's asking you to decide.
Okay. Oh, Councillor Laws is on the list next. Yeah, I think we'll keep discussing and we'll try and order, not next, after Councillor Scott, Councillor Hobbs, then Laws. We'll keep having some more questions and then we'll come back to clarity on what we're actually trying to achieve as well. Councillor Scott.
Okay, thank you. Two questions. The first one is, what have the various catchment groups had to say about their proposed Tinker solution?
We haven't engaged with them yet on this particular proposal.
Yeah. Okay.
That's all, Councillor Scott, at this point?
No,
it's not.
But, so we haven't talked to the catchment groups in this, and then we're talking about how significant this is. My second question is, will this proposal, one of our key focuses and responsibilities is addressing restoring degradation of fresh water. Will this proposal address...
I think your microphone may not be on. Sorry to interrupt you, but yeah. Yeah, it doesn't seem to be happening. Yeah, that's up.
Okay, it's the wrong button. Yeah, will this proposal address the degradation, restore our waterways, and how will it do that without, because this is, we've already got a significant LTP and we're putting in planning resource with this without science resource.
So this LTP, this proposal, so under this LTP we talked about in the next 3 years doing or considering 3 potential remediation projects, which are Lake Hayes, Lake Tuakitoto, and Tomahawk Lagoon. And through this proposal and by developing those integrated catchment plan, we're really looking at driving and really identifying those other projects and other remediation projects we might want to do further on after those 3 years, those first 3 years, based on a more structured engagement and a more structured process to identify those projects. So yes, it's part of how do we identify and structure our work programs around environmental maintenance of our freshwater and enhancement of degraded water bodies.
And just for clarification, it's about planning resource, not science resource.
So I think I've already answered the question in terms of we're already underpinning it with science through, I guess we haven't given specific, the science resource provides for a whole lot of things. We have put that into our LTP proposal at this stage, but we haven't explicitly pulled out a science resource just for integrated catchment planning, no. I just wanted to also just kind of build on what Silva's doing in terms of just clarification. This will deliver an agreed set of actions for each FMU in terms of what we as a collective, we being the community and other stakeholders and the ORC, believe will restore degraded water bodies. It won't deliver those actions.
Thank you. Councillor Hobbs.
First of all, I agree with integrated, whatever it's called, integrated catchment management. But the last 2 weeks have begun to hit home at me while I'm out doing the freshwater visioning. How do I fit in if I live in Caversham with integrated catchment management? How the hell do you involve me? Because I think at the moment we are constantly involving the communities out there and ignoring the communities in here within the city boundaries who have just as strong an interest.
So, I mean, in theory, so I'm not going to necessarily address in practice, but in theory it doesn't inhibit that in any way because Caversham is within, at the moment we're just leaning on the FMUs as a definition of catchment, but that's something we can revisit as we progress. But Caversham is in with the Dunedin Coast FMU, so it shouldn't distinguish between an urban and rural.
But if I were to ask for who attended all the different meetings, I am sure, and in fact, there was a meeting at Orokonui that people rang me up and reported to me about. Yes, I knew you were there, Hilary, and they sadly talked about the people who hadn't been invited and who were unaware of the meeting. And so I'm struggling at the moment. I really like the principles behind this, but I'm one of 6 people representing a great number of people who I don't think get the proportional involvement that these groups out here do.
I guess all I can do is say, I guess, is by proposing if the community went with option 2, that effectively adds resourcing to do that engagement and coordination with community in the development of these integrated catchment plans, and that's the reason that I guess a significant proportion of the resources being put forward under options 2 and 2A and 2AB.
Thank you, but can you hear what it's really hitting me. I mean, I've often heard regional councils referred to as farmers' councils, and I know that's a horrible sort of canard.
I think it's about the how, not the what necessarily. Yeah. So it's about how we go about developing these integrated catchment plans.
Thank you.
Councillor Laws.
Listen, I'm an unabashed advocate of option 2A here. Anything that allows us to consult in depth over something as critical as this is a good thing. But, question, this is a mechanism by which we engage and lead policy with the VFMUs, is that right?
Yes, I'll say that's a good description.
Okay, cool. If that's the case, that's part of our job. Now, I'm happy for you to put it in the LTP, but I don't see this as a significance issue. I see this as part of our job of consultation. What was significant was dividing our region into FMUs, I would have thought. The consultation process that we use after that is really all about a mechanism rather than a policy. So do we really need to consult on this, or can we just assume that we'll put it in the long-term plan with the resources attached, and if people want to make a submission on it, off they go?
So, Nick, I'm just going to flag, I might chuck to you on this for a second. I might throw to Nick in terms of the LTP. From my understanding is that if we don't put it through as a significant activity, then it gets put in with, it's not signalled out, and we don't provide options to the community, we don't consult on the different types of options. So, Nick, do you have anything to add in terms of whether it's a significant activity or not?
From the LTP point of view, the thing is whether it's a consultation item or not, this activity can still be included in the LTP and not specifically consulted on. But if we consult on it, as Sylvie said, if it's an item that is of particular interest, it gives us the opportunity to ask the community, one, whether they want us taking that approach, and two, we can outline different options on how we can do it and get feedback as to how the community would like us to go forward with it. But if council decides that they don't see that as significant and they want to forge ahead with it anyway, it can still be included in the LTP regardless. Was that the answer to the question you were asking, Councillor Laws?
Well, sort of, yes.
Or you're asking something slightly different, I think.
No, I was asking, I guess what I was asking was, is this really significant? The way in which we consult, I would never have thought was a significant issue under our significance policy or under any local government. That's a mechanism by which we then make policy, and it's usually those policies that influence our communities. So if we choose, for example, today, let's just say option 2A, and put it into our long-term plan, what's the problem? Why would we need to consult on that when the greater issue is water quality and water management in the next 5 to 10 years?
Okay, well, I think we've had the answer to that, and you're putting, we'll have some debate in a wee bit as well, and you can come back in with the statements about prioritisation. Okay, the next person is Councillor Malcolm, followed by Councillor Wilson.
Where does this whole proposal actually fit in with the Otago catchment groups that is being formed and generated at the moment? It seems to, where does it fit with that?
Hopefully complementary. So I think, I don't know if Gavin might and Andrew might add to this, but that formation of that organisation or that incorporation, I think, is enabling the various catchment groups across Otago to coordinate and hopefully learn from each other. I think, as Sylvia alluded to earlier, we have different, I guess, across Otago, the catchment groups operate slightly differently. Some areas, I'm well aware, already have developed their own integrated catchment plans, and we would need to work with them in their existing integrated catchment plans, and there are other areas where we don't have a catchment group at all. So that would be part of the role if we went with option 2, would be part of the leadership role that ORC would take in terms of leading the conversation, not only with catchment groups, but with other stakeholders in the community around the development of integrated catchment plans.
Right. And I thought that was the role of the Otago catchment group, and that was the formation of them. But so. Could I just make a wee comment on what Councillor Hobbs was saying? And if I relate it to North Otago with our main urban area, Oamaru, and there currently is, and that same feeling was probably coming around our talks, but there is currently an urban group being formed. It starts in Rule because that's where the water starts, and they're about to form that. So they're probably, even under this proposal, there's no reason why a Caversham group for the creek up there couldn't form and be part of a group and get all be integrated, I wouldn't think.
Interesting as well, when you're talking about integrated catchment management and you're thinking about Caversham, you're thinking immediately about the creek, but actually you might be thinking about groundwater, and you might be thinking about economic development, and you might be thinking about coastal, well, maybe not coastal erosion, maybe, but it's very, very broad, integrated catchment management. It just so happens that sometimes there's a river in the middle of it, but there's a broad area that it's describing. And when you were talking as well, Gwyneth, about it lining up with the FMUs, they're not even lining up with waterways in some instances, like Dunedin Coast. Yeah, so exactly what we are encompassing. Not entirely sure until we get into it and talk to communities about what the key issues are.
There is a point of information, and the point of information is, I just use Caversham as an example. I don't live there.
No, but it's just
I'm not ashamed of it. I just don't live there. It's just
that we're all thinking about water quality, which is really important, and I think that will come into the discussion in a minute about.
No, it's not just water quality.
Priority, but it's about everything at this point. Councillor Wilson.
Sorry, two questions slightly related. First is, I understood, but I could be wrong and I can't find it quickly in the Local Government Act, that we had to consult on a preferred option. And so I'm intrigued that, Sylvia, you told us that you could just go out with all three options. I did think we had to have a preferred one for the purposes of consultation. But if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I would like some confidence in that, though, if that's okay. And the other one is, you've got the full-time FTEs, but it doesn't actually have the costs. And I'm finding that really hard to make a decision on, because it's a long-term plan, and presumably at that stage we would have the costings, or have I missed something in the report?
No, we haven't provided. Maybe I leave Nick to talk about the LGA requirements.
You do. You pick one of the options as our preferred option. And although you will put all three options up there so the public understand what different options are available, and you provide the analysis and show what the impact would be around funding and rating for all of the options. But you always pick one as your preferred option, because ultimately that will be the one that's fed through into the consolidated LTP financial picture.
Thank you. So the suggested recommendation just gives three. Are we meant to be making that decision today, or are you going to develop up those costings for another day?
We were hoping you'd make a decision today, because it's chicken and egg, isn't it? But we can go away and do a whole lot more work on this, then to come back and for you not to be comfortable. So we were at least wanting you to deal with the recommendations today.
The recommendations don't have a preference, sorry, that's what I'm just trying to get to.
Yes, I understand, and I think they could be amended so that you did vote on a preference.
Yeah, we can do it that way, or we can do it when we actually have the consultation document itself will come back to you, and you can do it then as well. You can make sure that we have the preferred option.
It is a lot of work to put into, it's a lot of work to carry on with if your answer is no, that's the only thing.
Okay, sorry, I might be missing someone. No, was that all, Councillor Wilson? Yep.
At the moment?
No? Yeah?
At the moment, I said.
Sorry, Councillor Malcolm.
So I just wonder if I could move the recommendations 1, 2 and 3 with the addition that the preferred option be option 2B, knowing that that is all going out to consultation.
Seconders.
Okay.
To be as well.
To be or not to be, that is the question.
It's going to be more of a nuisance than...
So you want the more slow approach?
Yes, I think.
Okay. We've got them over in a seconder then.
Talk to the motion.
It doesn't mean the work stops.
Yeah, if you want to speak to the motion now.
Well, right, I probably do want to talk to the motion. Look, this needs to go to consultation. This, in my opinion, is probably the most critical phase of environmental improvement for Otago. We have to have this integrated catchment approach correct. We need to know what our communities want, and we need to be very, very sure of that. I think we may come back with, from the community, it could be 1, 2 or 3, or they want nothing. I'm not too sure on that, but I think let's get it out. I prefer option, the third option, not to slow the process down, but I have a reasonable understanding of the impacts on the long-term plan that we're putting ahead, and that may be reflected in the numbers that come up from that. So I believe this is absolutely significant, and it is a critical part of how we're going to go ahead environmentally for the next 10 to 15 years.
Were you the seconder, Kate?
No.
Do you want to speak next? Yeah.
Yeah, I obviously, I support integrated catchment areas, okay? I love the approach. There are two things making me support 2B. And one is the understanding, and tell me if I'm wrong on this, that we're going ahead with the land and water plan, which we hope to have done by 2023, which means that in terms of things happening in those catchments, they will be happening definitely following 2023 as people apply for consents and change. But this is that's the way of doing it by regulation. This is the way of doing it by sharing knowledge and working with people, all right, and actually getting them producing up the knowledge. And no matter whether we went 2A or 2B, I do think that would not be taking part until, as we got in the land and water plan. So that's why I'm sort of arguing for that. There's a second reason I'm arguing for 2B. And that is, I haven't been part of the long-term plan discussions, and one day we'll have a discussion about why we have a meeting on a Tuesday. But we haven't been having a discussion on the long-term plan. I haven't been present at them yet, but I'm reading it and trying to make notes. And it looks as though we won't be able to accomplish everything we want all at once. If this is still doing integrated management and is doing it more slowly, and it fits in with the land and water plan, then I'll go for 2B, because it's not as immediately costly as 2A is. It's slower.
Wilson again. Yep.
Era. To be or not to be, well, someone here to say it. And I'm going to say not to be. I'd happily second the foreshadowed suggestion of Councillor Laws for 2A. And the reason for that is I think 2 is the way to go as an integrated catchment management, and I've been involved in that at a very exciting level in the past. The problem is at the moment I think we have set up a expectation that this stuff is going to be happening on the ground and people are going to be very keen to participate. And I think if we were to leave this for 10 years, it would have missed completely the boat by most of those catchments. They will go out and do it themselves and be very frustrated that they haven't had us on board with them. This is exactly core business of the council. It's stuff that we should have been doing for the last 6 years and haven't. And I know it's going to be tough to bring everything in, but if we don't put it in as 2A, adding it in later will be really, really hard. If we're meaningfully consulting, you put it in and then take it out later if we can't afford it. But if you put in something that's cheap, go for the cheapest option now and consult on it and then try and add it in, you're more likely not to go for it because of it is the one that isn't added in, whereas we've added in a whole lot of other things before people get consulted on anyway. It's just the nature of the process. So pro forma, I think the only fair way of doing it is add the cost in up front and have the chance of taking it out. That's why I'll be supporting 2A should this fail.
Question for you would be whether the 2B, which is the 10 years, would enable prioritisation of some catchments to be really quick and some to be a bit slower, or are you saying when you're talking about 2B, isn't it? No, 2A, that you want everything done in 5 years?
Absolutely, that may be the case, and that's what the consultation might show us, and therefore we can go down to 2B. And that's absolutely fine if that's what everyone suggests. But if you say 2B for the purposes of consultation, you will find it really hard come May next year or April, whenever we're doing it, to add more costs in, given what we know is going to be a hefty long-term plan anyway. And I don't know why this one wouldn't, it's more a pro forma thing at the moment, and see how the community feels about it.
Councillor Calvert.
Seems to me each of these options is adding something, so none of them is business as usual. So we're not saying, do we want to spend extra on an integrated catchment model, which we're already pursuing at some level. This is how much extra do we want to spend? And I would have thought one of the things, if we were consulting because we thought that this was a special thing to do, we would be consulting starting with, do you think it's special or should we do nothing? Nothing apart from what we're already doing. We are already going down this track, and the whole thing seems to me, therefore the enhanced one, if I was producing options, I'd just assume that the first one was business as usual, because that's what we're doing and it's in Sarah's sort of operational thing, and that only if we're wanting to spend extra money in the long-term plan beyond what we were already heading. So what we'd be consulting on would be, are you happy with just heading the way we're heading, or would you like to spend more money on doing it in a more integrated and different fashion? But I don't think these options allow us, we're demanding that we spend more already, that there's no extra option. So I can't see how people out there could make a choice, because I don't think we can even tell what the difference between business as usual is, which isn't an option, and spending extra money and what they'd get for the extra money.
Okay, I might ask Mrs. Gardner here to comment on the extent to which this is different to what business as usual or the status quo would look like. Thank you.
So I think the key difference between business as usual and the status quo is we're talking about integrated catchment planning. So the FMU construct isn't necessarily the construct that we'll use for this, because it could be a finer scale. But the other thing is that the things we do now are all water related. As Ms. Elsom said before, actually what this proposes is not just water. This is a fundamental shift in the way we think about our business, because it includes air and biodiversity and all of the other things that are encompassed within the work that we do. So to my mind, it's a significant shift, because it's a new approach or way of coordinating and thinking about the work that we do.
Okay, so if I could, with that explanation, which makes sense to me, could I add in that I love integrated catchment plans, and I thought this was a really great place to go, but in its current form, I'm not prepared to vote for where it's going. When it comes back to us, which it probably will in an iteration further down the track, if it has an option about not doing something or doing these things or whatever, I'm very likely to be very enthusiastic about it, but I don't think it's currently in a form that I think we can move forward. I mean, we can develop it, but I'm not prepared to vote for it.
What the product actually is that you're getting for this thing, is what you're saying. You're not sure exactly what the benefit is still.
Yeah, I can't see how we could tell people what the benefit is and things that with the current stuff we've got. And I do understand that our staff need more before they waste too much time getting in amongst it. But when they have got in amongst it, if they feel confident that they've got an enthusiasm for us to give that option to the people, hey, do we want to get really into this and spend some more of your money on it, and this is what you get for it, then I can see myself being pretty keen. I'm just not
I can't support it.
Fair enough. Yep. Councillor Deek is the next person.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I must admit I am finding this all a bit difficult to get my head around, and the CEO has just got me even more confused by talking about air and all sorts of stuff, which I didn't see mentioned in this paper. However, I guess my fundamental question is that we as a council decided some months ago to significantly fund the collaborative volunteer farmer catchment groups. Great, I applauded that, and I'm very glad we did. Why didn't this come up then? If this is such a crash-hot idea, integrated catchment management, why didn't a bell ring in somebody's head saying, hang on, if we're doing that and we want to encourage participation and membership and activity and more collaboration with this council, then maybe an integrated catchment management approach would be the way to go. I didn't hear it mentioned then, and I'm wondering why not. Why are we tacking this on? It's not tack on, sorry, I shouldn't have said that. Why are we going down this different riverbed at this time with this approach? Is it because we've got a flash bit of new software which enables the layering of data on a catchment by catchment basis? The so-called portals, which are referred to here, or portal. So I'm struggling as to which way I'll go with this. And at the moment I'm inclined not to vote at all, because I simply don't get where this council is going to with these multiple approaches to managing water, managing catchments, working with people, encouraging action, etc., etc., etc. And yet we're saying, go here, go there. Oh, no, we'll go this way instead.
I think the confusion that a lot of people have got, it's not confusion actually, a lot of people have talked about water when they're talking about this, and it's a whole of the worldview encapsulated in a catchment.
Yes, but Madam Chair, surely when we came up with this, we could have gone to the existing catchment groups, which we are now funding and working with,
People are
saying,
not
what do you
wrong
think about this?
when
Is this a
you
good
are
idea?
thinking that your priority or the thing that's going on in your head is water. So some people are really keen to focus on that. What the CE has told us is that this is a new way of thinking for the organisation, of bringing things together organisationally and working with our communities. Some of us, I think, Councillor Calvert as well, are struggling to see what the end results will be and how that will actually match up with the FMU process as well. But it's much bigger than the Land and Water Plan as well. It's something that describes everything. And to some of us as well, is that where we want to be as well? Or should we be prioritising our actions more than just integrated catchment management on everything with everyone?
So if I can I help you a bit more? One of the things that I think about with this is we get a lot of, there's two things. We get a lot of requests, or if you want, pressure from particular parts of the community, and they tend to be the things that get support, right? But there are whole parts of our communities that have, waterways and biodiversity challenges and all those sorts of things that aren't yet organised into catchment groups or aren't yet coordinating. We also have new responsibilities for things like preparing action plans. We haven't done those before, but anywhere where we have a degrading situation, we have to prepare action plans to fix that.
It's a freshwater example.
It is a freshwater example, but also those action plans, as part of those action plans, there might be activities that you undertake on the land.
No.
There might be particular species that you're trying to protect as a result. Some of the degradation could be have a consequence for species, mahinga kai, other things. So the catchment groups are absolutely to be applauded and they do a great job, but they don't cover all of Otago and they don't necessarily include all sectors of the community either. And so this approach is saying, look, there are some things that we'll do as a council. We have a facilitation role, but there are some things and outcomes the community will want. And as part of that role, we can put these plans together that deal with, A, the action planning that we have to do, but B, community aspirations as well. And so that's what this looks like.
Madam Chair.
That's really good. Yeah, we're coming to Councillor Scott, Forbes, Kelleher and Laws, who all would like to speak. Councillor Scott.
Yeah, that's right. We're all bursting to say it. But, you know, just listening to our CE speak and others speak, you know, there's a lot of positive things about this integrated approach. You know, like I suspect its strength is that water will be talking to biodiversity, be talking to biosecurity, and you know, and potentially on a catchment basis. So that's the strength. But at the same time, myself personally, and I thought this council, I believe it's also a weakness potentially in terms of fresh water. You know, at our last LTP workshop, what did we say as a group? That we wanted to prioritise fresh water. So I'm not denigrating the need to integrate, but my concern is that once again, we're lacking clarity about what we're actually doing to resolve the degraded water that we've got in this region. I have not heard anybody articulate really what are we doing over the next 5 years to address our catchments. It's more about let's get some more planning going. Let's get some more talking going. No extra scientists, you know, this type of thing. So my concern is that once again, we are dropping the ball in terms of a focus on fresh water. We haven't even spoken to the catchment groups that we set up. You know, I would have thought this is we all know what we're talking about in terms of a potential rate increase, and this is our anchor strategy, and we haven't actually even talked to our key partners in terms of, do you think this is actually where it sits? And, you know, what more can we do? In my personal view, we're just lacking, you know, we're as a council, we're doing very well in terms of fulfilling our policy and our planning and our central government obligations. But in terms of basically getting up the river, getting up the catchment, identifying those worst catchments, actually getting in there, working with the landowners, providing some science and some data that they need, once again, we just back off. That's my personal view. And that's basically it. My personal view is, I mean, to be, I wouldn't even entertain it. My personal view is that it should go to a working group. Just listen to everybody. There's some indecision around here. If there's indecision around here, what's the community going to say when we put it out in terms of consultation and the rate increase? It needs to be crystal clear, and the benefits and outcomes from it need to be crystal clear, and it needs to be addressing in the first instance, the first priority. That's what this council agreed, is resolving the degradation in fresh water, and the others to follow. Yes, integration, but that's not our first priority. We do have limitations in terms of resource and finance, and I believe we're dropping the ball. It needs to go back to the working party. It needs to actually just refine, not throw it out, refine it in terms of what are the outcomes that are ultimately going to come from it, to communicate with the catchment groups. Do you think we're doing the right thing? What are the things that we can sort of tweak? And then when it gets to submission time, we're all behind it. Thank you.
Ms. Gardner.
I think that what we're proposing is what you want.
Yes, me too. Absolutely.
Sorry, but I absolutely think you're just describing it in a different way. But but I think we're actually on the same page.
Yes.
Well, it's hard to know reading this and
Okay.
the more planning.
Planning is to a degree imposed on us, right? We have to do the freshwater plans, the action plans. We can't not do them. So we have to do that. But the other thing I would say to you, and somewhat some challenge back, is we've sat around this table and had several LTP conversations. I spoke to you at length about implementation, and there was no appetite for implementation. So what we did is we went away and we took all the things that you've told us, and we've created a new system that hopefully brings us closer to that implementation point where there's some clarity about we're going to do these things to achieve these results. That's what I think this will give us. So I guess what I'm saying is, on the one hand, I think you and I and the staff, actually we're not disagreeing. But the other challenge I would put back to you is we've had, 4 or 5 LTP conversations. I talked to you about implementation and there was no appetite. So this is what we brought back to you based on what you told us.
Perfect.
I think the marrying up, there is an appetite for implementation, but we need to be able to prove that the implementation is going to solve the issues. So the first point will be identifying the issues, which is where there's some discussion about whether the amount of investment in identifying those issues is there. So technically, whether or not the current level of science investment is enough to achieve that would be something for us to think about in supporting this approach. And the other thing is then what are the actual implementation solutions, and so how we would design those as well. And that'll take some resourcing as well. The process, I think everyone's agreeing, is a really good one. Integrated catchment management reflects exactly back what we've talked about in workshops. But I think people are worried about whether or not we're investing in more than just being able to get together and talk about our aspirations. And there's been a mixed message about how the level of investment that we're able to make. So I think maybe if we ask that again, clearly, how will we identify the issues, and then how will we work on solutions? Is that something that would need to come back to another LTP perhaps stage, or are we putting up front that we need? How would it work? Yeah.
So you're talking about, sorry, just for clarification, you're talking about solutions to be delivered and identified actual solutions to be delivered and put into the current LTP process. Is that what you're talking about?
No, coming up with what they would be at least, because we know that we can't go out straight away and say, okay, if we planted something, flax bushes everywhere, we're going to solve every problem. Yeah.
So this is, I guess, as Sarah was saying, this is the process that will give us exactly that.
Yeah.
Right? So this is the process that will give us an output. When I talk to outputs rather than outcomes, we will have an action plan for every catchment, as we decide to define it, depending slightly on the options, in Otago, that will look at the full broad spectrum, not just freshwater, as Gretchen was saying, but we'll look at a spectrum across all the areas that we work across in terms of natural resource management. We will have agreed with the community what the objectives are and what the actions are that we agree we need to deliver in order to achieve those objectives. That's what the output of this would be. It would be the action plans that would have agreed actions and agreed objectives. Yeah. How those, and hopefully we will have agreed how those actions will be delivered, because without knowing what the action is, we can't really identify how it's best delivered.
Without knowing what the issues are, though, which would be the thing, which is what communities ask us. So we think we've got a water quality problem. Your state of environment monitoring or whatever is showing us we think we do. How do we know we do, and how do we? have we got the level of investment that we would need to take us from we think we've got a problem to?
So all I can point to is again there's a public meeting, but we had a workshop where we presented last week, is that right? Mm-hmm. Where we presented what level of investment we are proposing, including in science and environmental monitoring. Now, if you don't feel that level of investment is enough to achieve what you need to in this integrated planning process, then I'm happy to hear it and have a discussion. I'm not sure this is the paper to have that discussion. It's probably a discussion around that LTP investment levels that we're currently discussing.
Yep. Okay. Right. Next on the list is Councillor Forbes.
Been around the block a couple of times since what I wanted to say, but I really support this. I think it's exactly what we want, and I would like to be going for option 2. 2B. I have some sympathy with Brian's concerns, and I have some concerns about how we fund in the LTP. The things we want to do just keep pouring on in, so I don't know how we're going to get around that, but that's discussion for another day, not for right now. But in number 10, I think really tells us a lot about it. In paragraph 10 about not having that clear overview, and this will give us that, and it's really important to me that happens, so that we get away from the ad hoc nature and put it all together. And I think that speaks to a lot of things, particularly Marion's person that lives in Caversham. They actually now have a chance to be involved. Yes. Because they have that chance from their quality of their air, their quality of their soil. I don't know if the salination would reach that high, but that sort of thing. So I think it brings it far more, makes it much more relevant to our urban communities as well. So I am all for it, and that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Councillor Callaghan.
Around to me. I'm astounded how we are overthinking and over-discussing this. This is really clear in this paper what we're being asked for. Marion's concern about the lady in Caversham, or the resident there, she'll be receiving a hard copy of our LTP with this in it, and she will be able to read it, consult on it, do whatever. Option 1 versus option 2, I mean, we're all in agreement about integrated environmental management. Option 1, we're still going to support and enable. Option 2, we're going to lead and facilitate and coordinate. And that's a lot of work for us. And then we're saying option 2A within 5 years and option 2B within 10. Well, we've created massive uncertainty for a huge amount of catchments across Otago. There will be some that can move through earlier. There will be some that will be later. But we have to let that uncertainty resolve first. So if we're going to lead and facilitate it, our staff are going to be so swamped in everything else that they are doing in the first initial 3 or 4 years. And we will get to that once we have more certainty, possibly within 5 years. So, to be.
Very good. Councillor Laws, thanks for your patience there.
That's all right. Thank you for listening to me. I've got a bit to say. The first is it's about bloody time we just got on with it. And can I say to the staff that have brought this paper, fantastic. The ORC hasn't been leading anything for a long time, and the integration of that leadership with community collaboration and consultation is welcome, long overdue. I think they've done excellently, and we should just get on with it because we have been stuffing around for so long. That's the first point. Second, love the idea of integrating, and I think that's important catchment to goats catchment. One of the things that most concerns me is that one catchment will be off on its own, and then we're going to be waiting 10 years to get to another catchment. It's ludicrous. If you are going to an actual fact plan across the region, then make sure that everything's happening at the same time so that you can utilise both the planning expertise, the experience, but also, most importantly, you can utilise the resources that you've got and that they can cross-credit each other. I particularly like paragraph 17 on page 12. I think it sets it out brilliantly. The advantages of integrated catchment management, in particular under better coordination across the agencies. The sentence that says, within ORC activities across its functions, and then it lists them: biosecurity, biodiversity, river management,
drainage and flood scheme management, land, water management, etc., could be better aligned. And that's what this does. If we were only doing water, Brian, then you can't actually do water separate from all those other things as well. You've got to integrate them and you'll get much more community buy-in. The reason that I go for option 2A is because option 2B is the coward's way. It is slow, it is ponderous, it is exactly what the ORC should be getting away from. Option 2A is faster, it's fairer, much more equitable. It meets current community expectations. The community is expectant now, it's wanting to get involved. For God's sake, you turn them around and say, we'll see you in 10 years, sport, to a particular catchment. That's just ludicrous. The community is currently engaged. They want us to lead. This is a leadership role, and this is much more equitable across all the FMUs. Let's just get on with it. Let's do it. This is what we've asked our staff to do. They've come up with, actually, enormous credit, the model that will work. Now they've come up with a model that will work. Let's make sure it is given the resources that's required and that we meet our community's expectations across the board. I'm option 2A. Let's go. And let's go now.
Thanks. We've still got Dr. Carter as well. I'm just signalling that she would like to speak. Yep.
Just two questions because I don't quite get it. Is the difference between 2A and 2B the difference of 2 FTEs and 4 FTEs in the leadership of catchment action programs?
So under 2B, you build up over a longer period of time because you're doing a catchment by catchment at a slower rate. Does that make sense? Whereas under 2A, you ramp up faster and therefore you need extra
You'll be doing
resourcing.
some at the same time.
But is it
you will always
a
be doing some at the same time.
equation, or is it not that simple?
Because you've got 5 FTEs, 2.5.
Yeah, just have the year. So under 2A, you get to the peak of 5 FTEs in year 3, and under 2B, you get to the peak of 5 FTEs in years 4 to 10. So probably some like 5 or 6 or something like that.
Second question, this is the catchment groups. We're still supporting the catchment groups doing their thing regardless. It's a different thing. Thank you. Just wanted to make that really clear.
Yep. Dr. Carter.
Oh, kia ora. Can you all hear me? Yep.
Yep.
You're still filtering them out. Okay, so the mana whenua have applauded the integrated approach right from the start because it fits really nicely with our own views on integrated management across and giving a full whole order approach to everything. So it also gives equitable footing to environmental, social, cultural and economic aspects of all these different areas, catchments, whatever, and it allows you to make your choices and by looking at the choice and consequences of those choices all at once. So we appreciate it and we really liked this paper. Edward and I had a discussion about it because he couldn't be here. We did disagree on B and A. Edward preferred the slower approach, but we did agree that I would listen to the discussion and take it from there. And so to us, I guess, as soon as we can get this on the way and the ball rolling, the better. So 5 years, but the only reservation we have with a shorter time frame is the financial implications. And thinking back to the discussions on the long-term plan and that finance paper we had last meeting, I think it was, that's already starting to be an issue. But we would probably prefer it to get started sooner rather than later. So we definitely support option 2 and at this stage option 2A.
Thank you. Has everyone had a chance to speak that anyone that hasn't spoken? Councillor Noon, did you speak?
I haven't spoken, but there's probably nothing really I can add other than the ability to understand these catchments in terms of expectations, shared objectives, the vision going forward. And as you've alluded to, Madam Chair, the next steps will fall out of that by way of understanding the issues and then understanding what potential solutions we have after that. But really interested to listen to the discussion.
Right. Right of reply.
Yes, certainly. Look, this is all about changing the whole interface of ORC with our communities. I just think it's exceptionally exciting. Why am I slowing it down a wee tad? An LTP, and here's the one 2018 to 2028. When you look at the document that we'll bring out next year, next year we bring it out, whenever we bring it out, it's going to be completely different. It's going to be completely different. So I'm not worried about signalling a slightly slower approach, and we've heard from our director that really it's only in years 4 and 5 that we're to 3, or we go out to 4 and 5 and a wee bit further if there's a requirement. So my concern is about our staff capability and not in their ability, but with so much happening, is to actually get this process going, and also with the community's ability and capabilities of jumping on with what we're proposing. And I think that's going to take time. With a lot of groups, it's not going to take much time or two at all, but the Caversham ladies, who will take a wee bit longer because they generally do, it is going to be quite difficult to get our whole community moving in the same direction. So that's why I'm saying let's take a wee bit of time to get it going through. I understand Mr. Allison's going for B because he sat in the LTP planning, which Dr. Cardi unfortunately missed. So please take that on board. This is a fundamental shift for us, and we need the time to sell it right. Our water, look, absolutely no problem. The work that Councillor Scott is doing at the moment with their target catchment groups, that's going to be our catalyst to get our water right. I've got absolutely no issues with that at all. We're increasing our science team, we're increasing our monitoring. So, I mean, that's going to be the backup to those catchment groups. So I've got no problem at all. So let's say that's the water catchment group. But everything else with our natural hazards, the whole body of our catchments is going to be encapsulated with this. Our water catchment groups will form a huge part of making that happen. I'm just saying, listen, long-term plan only lasts a year or two, but I'd rather signal a slightly slower approach to ensure that we've got community and everyone going in the same direction. I know they want to go in the same direction, but we need to monitor that with capability. So put it out to the community that our favourite option is 2B. Thank you.
Thank you. Shall we take the recommendations in parts then, perhaps? You've moved them all so that the recommendation 3...
Have them separate?
Yeah, I think separate might be better. We'll get to 3, which has the options, but let's cover off the first 2.
We're both happy
Very happy to do 1 and 2 together,
okay.
And then you can do 3.
Okay, we'll take 1 and 2 moved. Councillor Malcolm, seconded Councillor Hobbs together. You've got them there, well understood. So I'll put those, all in favour.
Aye.
Against, carried, which takes us then to recommendation 3, and we have crossed off. How would that be worded?
So just Les, this is as much to you as to Les. So we still need option 1. So we need all the options to be presented to public. So we still need to uncross that out.
We're signalling a preferred.
And then a C. So A, B, and C. A, B stay the same perhaps, and then C is saying, and the preferred option is.
Yes.
Is that happy with that?
Thank you.
I see. I think I see.
We're not going out with just one option. We are signalling a preferred one.
First one will be the financial consider in the actual document.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So shall we call for a division on that one then? Oh, have you got a 4 there?
Is that one just...
Or is it
so we can do that?
Well,
we can do a C or we can do a 3.
Yeah, I think it's a C. So we're just dealing with 3, which has the 3 parts to it. Is that what you understand? Mover and seconder are happy with that?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Shall we call for a division then? I think.
Happy to
Yeah.
call for a division.
Yeah.
Totally blows me away.
Councillor Calvert,
Abstain?
Councillor Duker.
Aye.
What am I voting on?
Preferred option.
Size of your birthday cake.
Yeah, 2B. 4, so C.
So it's yes or no?
Yes. Councillor Holmes.
Yes.
Councillor Kelleher.
Yes.
Councillor Robertson.
4.
Councillor Walker.
Yes.
Yes.
Councillor Noon.
Yes.
Councillor Scott.
No.
And Councillor Wilson.
No, and laws.
And
Oh,
Councillor Wallace.
Yeah, thanks for missing me out. No.
And Dr. Carter.
We'll have to go with yes.
So that's carried 8-3 with 1 abstention.
Okay, thank you very much. I declare.
I think if there's a division, it should say who they are, should it?
Yeah.
Thank you. We're going to have a quick break now for 10 minutes and then we'll get back into it. We're adjourned.
Oh, why not? We went over that. Yes, you might have.
I don't think that.
Remember we discussed the fact that...
No, you didn't meet the leaders. Yes, we're live and recording.
Gavin was just going to make...
Welcome back then to our committee meeting, paper 7.2, Integrated Otago Trail Network Investigation. I'll leave it with you, Dr. Palmer and team, to present the paper if required, and then we'll discuss.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think we'll probably just take it as read and happy to take any questions.
Open to questions then.
Havisham's in here.
Anybody like to comment on the
You've already got a
trail network? We can have debate if we don't have questions, if we move the recommendations. Yep. Councillor Scott.
Yeah, I'd just like to talk about the report and think...
I'll move it if that's what we need to.
You just want to talk about it, okay?
Yeah.
Councillor Calvert has moved. Councillor Forbes has seconded. Do you want to speak on your motion at this point or reserve?
Councillor Scott to get in amongst it, whatever he's up to.
Councillor Scott.
You're quite happy for me to access the report. I'm allowed to access it, I can access it. Which is not the situation with everything in our region, I must say. Look, my fundamental objective is for the public to be able to access public spaces, public land, public waterways, the Queen's Chain, and I think some people might say, well, can't we do that now? Well, I think you'll find that in practice, yes, often and most times we can, but often we can't. And I just finished for example, the Te Araroa Trail last Monday, got to Bluff, and I must say there's some wonderful experiences, but there's also some frustrating experiences in terms of limited access and access constraints. For example, walking down a road with a waterway from here to me, to Councillor Deaker, it being fenced off, unable to, at the end of the night, being able to camp within the Queen's Chain and so forth. And it just seems to me that, just where this council and this community is at in terms of we're trying to encourage biodiversity and plantings, and we're endeavouring to take pride in our waterways, that we should be able to access them in a reasonable sort of way. Am I trying to promote people walking nilly-nally over people's farmland? No, I'm not. What I'm trying to do is identify the opportunities by right that are there that aren't always apparent. And I mean, like where I personally live, there's a reserve. People struggle to access the reserve. Basically, over the years, just access rights sort of disappearing, fences turning up, it might be scrub, it might be whatever, and a lack of opportunity. Or this council could just look at itself in terms of its flood banks. I think this report talks about that the public cannot access the Taieri River flood banks, if I've got that right, and I find that, staggering. If you look at the docks, and then it talks about that the lease contract says, maybe there can't be public access. This is to a public space, the public river. I mean, what's going to happen on this flood bank? That's so important. If you look at Dockland, for example, their leases actually enable people to access the dock estate. So, it just seems to me that we need to, grow as an organisation. I'm actually hoping that in our RPS that we recognise that accessing public space, public land and waterways is some type of right and obligation, and that we should promote it. I say it again, I'm not talking about willy-nilly over farmers' land. I'm talking about through historical access paths and rights and so forth. I believe that the ORC, as I said before, should get its own house in order. It should, when it looks at biodiversity opportunities and waterway opportunities at the same time, it should be also considering the access opportunities. And I also think
that as a region, there's an opportunity to identify the gaps that are going on in terms of access. And I think there's a need there, not necessarily to bankroll. I mean, our finance director will be starting to get concerned. I'm not talking about this bankrolling projects, but just to see, and to support and to promote and to do the right thing as a responsible regional organisation. That's where I sit. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Laws, you've got your hand up, I think.
I have, thank you. I note the recommendations that they are relatively timid on page 21 to receive the report, note the report, and then note the opportunities identified, which really doesn't take us anywhere, does it? So I propose 4, or an addition to that, which is that we further explore the opportunities identified in the report and a potential future workshop. That would be the resolution. I'm really keen on us embracing this. I think it's going to be a big change in philosophy for the ORC to actually lead something that's not its core function, but it's time we did. I've long maintained since I've been around this council table that we should be a regional leader, not a regional follower, which is what we are. And now we're following government dictate rather than initiating stuff ourselves. But this is one of those in which there would be clear and present advantages to all Otago, should we play a leadership role. Can I also just say this? It's a bit of a slap to TAs publicly, and I'm happy to do that. TAs have, post-COVID, gone into timid mode. They've gone into trying to cut, trying to not spend money, not to think ahead, not to lead, to refine themselves to the basics. I'm particularly disappointed that the Dunedin City Council and their particular views on this matter. Can I tell you that the experience up here in Dunstan is that these trails are a major economic boom for wherever they are and whoever is involved or near them. And so can I just say to the TAs, you should be thinking of this not simply as an environmental and a recreational initiative, but as an economic stimulus package as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. Thank you for the report, and I welcome seeing it as far as it goes. And I'm delighted that we followed up on a submission that came through the annual plan. The reason I say as far as it goes, and that may sound like a criticism, it isn't, but I think having just had a discussion on integrated catchment management, this report talks really well to the regional land transport plan and our transport function. It doesn't talk well to our function as under the RMA, and section 6D of nationally significant things includes access to water. And we've got a role there, and how we do that, whether it's comments in the regional policy statement, as Councillor Scott said, and esplanade strips and a whole lot of other things, is the other part. Now, if we're going to do really good integrated catchment management, we'll be talking with those groups, with catchment groups at a catchment scale rather than farm by farm, saying, are there ways you can provide walking tracks, maybe cycling tracks, or access to the water, whether it's for fishermen, kayakers or walkers, preferably not with dogs when it's near farmland, and to provide that recreational asset. You only have to look at the Arrowtown one, or the Clyde to Alexandra one, or the one from Beaumont, which is now incorporated into the Clutha Gold Trail, to see how successful they can be. Which brings me to the recommendations, which I am very disappointed to see in the same context as I was earlier on about what this regional council used to do. I don't agree with the third one. This isn't new for this regional council, it's just new now because we haven't been doing it. This regional council did work on Tyree Mouth, it did work on the Beaumont one, it did work on other trails. It's just that we haven't lately.
Port Chalmers.
So I would very much like to see that line about it's new for the council taken out of the motion, because I don't support it, because I don't think it reflects the reality. The reason I'm really passionate about this, sometimes you don't see what you see in your own backyard. And a few years ago, I was talking to someone outside a cafe I know in Middlemarch, and he'd been coming to that cafe for the last 15 years, and he said, "Where have you been today, Kate?" And I said, "I've been down at the river with the dogs." And he said, "What river?" He'd been coming through the Strath Tyree, by its very name, gives you an idea of something to do with the Tyree River, and he had never seen the river. Because you don't ever get to access it. There is very little way of seeing it, and yet it's one of our major rivers in New Zealand. And it brought back to me how we in the valley don't even really get to see it, except for the willows, which some of us don't like as much as others. But we do, and Brian's right, we should be able to access those places in a controlled way. I don't want people walking all over other people's farmland or everything.
Their dogs.
But in a controlled manner. But those sort of things are important. And so I think this is a start. I think there's a long way to go to ensure that we give meaning to how good the environment can be if people are engaged with it and understand it, and also can help and contribute to whether it's restorative plantings or just keeping an eye on things. I think this could be a win-win-win working with catchment groups, but it won't be if we just limit it to trails.
Can I?
Councillor Forbes has been waiting. I missed her out.
Just in response to two people who suggested changes to my motion, I think.
Oh, okay,
both
sorry,
Kate and,
yep.
I would be happy to amend the motion in number 3 to say that notes that there are opportunities identified in the report which could be canvassed by the new proposed integrated catchment group people, because if we've got people looking in at that, if we end up with integrated management plan people looking at the whole catchment, then this would be very much something that they could be looking at. So it wouldn't be new, it would be looked at in context of something that's already happening.
So it will take 10 years?
Not necessarily. Depends what the people out there want, Michael.
It's 10 years quicker than it has been done.
10 years ahead of nothing. It's pathetic.
Okay, we've captured that, and we've got Councillor Forbes wishing to speak.
Okay, I do very pleased to support this motion. Really, Saperi, was it? The report was excellent, and having a good look through what are opportunities and what barriers there are, and so on and so forth. Very, very pleased to receive that report. I'd be happy to support Michael Law's amendment if the mover is also inclined to. I think that this whole the trails thing is important on many, many levels: transport, connecting with nature, connecting people to communities, climate change, the gamut. And it fits in, as Councillor Wilson has said, fits in really, really well with our catchment approach, integrated approach. But my main concern, communities are working really hard on this too. Queenstown Trails Trust have got submissions in now, and they're all raising money and trying to get ahead. And they work really, really hard, and we heard from people earlier in the day who are moving ahead on this too. They work very hard, and we make it not easy. We make it even harder than it needs to be at the moment. This report enables them to a degree, so noting it as a very good step forward to actually do something and go ahead and do more would be even better. And I'm not saying we don't always, but we're going to need to be brave when it comes to setting our budgets. It's another thing that we want to do. And while it may not be new business, it is new to this lot, and we don't have it budgeted for, and that is going to have even more impact. So the real courage from this council is going to come when we sit down and look at the numbers on that plan. But given all of that, I'm very happy with it. Thank you, and happy to support going faster and harder there, Michael. Thank you.
That's Gary, not mine.
Right. Yeah, good report. Happy to support around trails, Cross Otago. What I don't support is around our flood bank assets. My concern with those is that they are there predominantly to manage a flood. And those assets are sitting in what I guess you'd describe as a state of equilibrium at the moment. They are there providing a service, they are leased and they are grazed and they are maintained and managed. If we were going to allow public access, unlimited public access onto those assets, then it really worries me that the integrity of those assets and the ongoing management of those assets is going to be in question. So if there was a way around that, then that's fine by me. I guess what we'll be bearing in mind that in a flood, there will be the public on our assets, and that may be another level of people protection that we have to do while we're also out managing the flood and the assets. So I think council just needs to be really careful, and it's not about stopping people going on our assets. I think we should consider it, but if we are going to allow trails there, they cannot jeopardise the integrity of the asset, and so they're going to have to be constructed in a way that we're very comfortable with, and understanding that there is added risk by allowing that. But otherwise I do support the extension of trails around the region.
Okay, any further? Councillor Noon.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Just a couple of comments. Yes, support the recommendations. During COVID, I think, we as a community, as a country, reconnected ourselves with the great outdoors in lots of ways, but in particular, walking. And I certainly did a fair bit of that, and I know others did the same. So the advantage to have a connected trail network is not only good for, as Councillor Laws has alluded to, for economic benefits, but for health and well-being is huge. And the only other comment I wanted to make was Brian mentioned about the Port Chalmers cycleway. Essentially, the ORC's project was the catalyst, the first stage of that project, which was from the Otago Yachting Club through to Ravensbourne. To Ravensbourne. That was the catalyst for the harbour, basically the harbour cycling walkway network, which has now grown like Topsy. So, we have been in this space before. So, support the recommendations.
Councillor Scott, thanks.
Yeah, and following on that, the council also did the feasibility study for the whole project, initial feasibility study that actually, provided some momentum to get where it is today. And of course, the DCC need to be congratulated for the role that they took. I just wonder whether the mover and the seconder would entertain Councillor Laws's thoughts in terms of is that already there? A workshop opportunity then? Okay, I do apologise. And in reply to Councillor Kelleher, we already, going through a process, Gary, with Clutha District Council in terms of a walkway along the top of their flood bank. These are not impossible situations. It's not necessarily about people walking nearly everywhere over the flood bank. There could be a process or whatever to address all the issues. But I think the days of just putting a fence up and saying you can't go there with some opaque reason are over. That's my view.
Just around the workshop and our time frame. So it would need to be ahead of the LTP really. And that means next week, and that's impossible. So yeah.
I don't see it that way.
Sorry, Councillor Laws. Yep.
Sorry,
you mentioned it. You'd like to comment?
I didn't mean that necessarily it needs to get added into the LTP. This could be an amendment to our annual plan next year. It just needs to be done.
Okay. Yeah. That's okay. Thank you.
Can we write?
that in specifically?
Yeah, we can write that in specifically.
Do you want to say, but do you want to just say during 2020 or
2021?
2021, I mean. Yes, sorry.
I'm happy to have an amendment
Is that
along the lines of what's just been suggested, because I think we should clearly put that in there, that it isn't something that we have to scramble to try and do.
Thank you.
That'd be great.
Thanks. That will
in
help.
2021.
Yeah, we're about ready to put these. Councillor Malcolm, though, you want to speak?
Yeah, look, I'd have to concur with Councillor Kelleher, and I'm certainly where assets are available for public use. The real issue I have around is our liability at flood time, and we've got open walkways on flood banks. Who then patrols and makes sure that those people are gone? As long as the correct mitigations are put in place, I'd have no problem with that. But it certainly is something that have to be seriously considered.
Yeah.
But the concept itself, I'm very happy with.
Okay, we have the mover and the seconder for those four. Councillor Calvert, seconded Councillor Forbes. We'll take them together then. All in favour, aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Okay, thank you. Next paper.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Great paper.
Thanks, Kim.
ORC role in South Dunedin Harbourside adaptation and collaboration with the DCC. Thank you, Dr. Palmer, the preparer of this one. Oh no, we have some other.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Madam Chair, we've got a presentation to work through as well. So perhaps we do the presentation, set the scene.
Is this a diligent?
I don't know, is it a diligent presentation?
No, the PowerPoint is, yes.
Sorry, there's two slides and then there's kind of an interactive thing we'll run
Okay,
through.
sure. Yeah. So that will be, sorry, did you say whether it was going to be able to go on Zoom or not?
But yes, on Zoom.
Oh, the presentation, those who are out in the Zoom world will not be receiving it. Okay, so we can forward that. Don't know whether we could email it now or not. Yeah.
It isn't diligent now, is it?
Anyway, we are currently going to see a presentation, which is a couple of slides and a bit of an animation. Yep.
So what we'd like to do in the next 15-20 minutes is to present the chronology of the technical work and communication and engagement work ORC has been doing in South Dunedin and Harbourside in the last 15 years. And I think that gives some background for the discussion later on the role of ORC going further in that program of work around South Dunedin and Harbourside adaptation. So it'll be very short presentation, introduction of the different work stream, the timeline to show how the chronological extent of the work, and Sharon will illustrate that with a tour a virtual tour of South Dunedin and Harbourside and show some of the key monitoring sites and also give some background on the environmental setting of the area. So the first thing before I start with the time frame is the purpose of the technical work and the communication work we've been doing. So it's really the main thing is to better understand the physical environment now, but also how this is going to change in the future. And that's really to guide decision making around adaptation. The other aspect is around communication. So the purpose of the communication work we've been doing is twofold. One is to raise awareness about natural hazard and changes that are occurring in that area. And the second fold is to equip the community to be able to make decisions. So really communicate around the issues in a way that different groups in the community will understand that. So we've got basically three work streams. The first one is looking at the water-related hazards. The second one is looking at the geological land-related hazard, and the third one is the communication and engagement. As you can see here on the slide, really the first step was to better monitor some of the component of the water cycle. So we've installed different types of monitoring, ranging from sea level in 2004, and Sharon will show where this is, to more intense groundwater level monitoring that was achieved last year. But we also monitor other hydrological parameters such as rainfall, and also working very closely with the city to monitor and model surface water and the interaction between that surface water, so what's coming from the hills basically, and the stormwater network. You'll see here that we've put the June 15 flood event, and that was really a highlight of how those different components interact together, and resulted in devastating results on the ground. So the second work stream is about the geology and the seismic hazards. So I've put the two timeline in parallel to see that we've progressed them together, and they're related in a way. So the main purpose here is to better understand the seismicity of South Dunedin, the consequence of earthquakes such as liquefaction, and also better understand the geology, because that also drives some of the other issues or consideration. For example, we are in 2016, we've installed a GPS station on Green Island to basically see if the ground is going up or down, subsiding or going up, which, depending on how it goes, can exacerbate some of the hazard or the changes, such as sea level rise. The reason also we've not only focusing on water is we recognize that to have an efficient adaptation plan, we need to consider the different hazards, the multi-hazard, instead of just focusing on the most common one. Otherwise, we'll be definitely missing part of the concern. And finally, the last work stream is about communication and engagement. This is really the purpose of that is based on the fact that ORC recognized the criticality of discussion and engagement with the community early stage in adaptation. So we've put a lot of effort with DCC to try to reach a wide range of public from schools, and we've got in 2017, for example, joined the Curious Mind program, which basically, and Sharon will cover that, I will not talk too much about it, but that was really good contact with kids at school, to drop-in session where people can come and have just open discussion with people from ORC, but also specialists from GNS, people from DCC, and we are using different tools, so reports, videos, but also very recently we've completed an exhibit that basically shows, illustrate the relationship between sea level and groundwater, and that's very visual. So it makes groundwater, which is usually underground, very visual for people to really understand how those changes are happening now and how this can be affected by climate change. So let Sharon illustrate what I've talked about and showing that in context.
Should be up on Google already, on Chrome. Yep.
So apologies, this might make some people a bit dizzy, so you can just shut your eyes and think about it if you'd rather, that's fine.
So
Most of the reports are like that.
yeah, on the subject of integrated catchment models and plans and things, I thought this is quite relevant really, because all I'm doing here is trying to draw your attention to the work that Jean-Luc has just summarised and how it really can be encapsulated in a kind of, this is the coastal central CBD Dunedin catchment, which is, I guess, the most densely populated part of Otago. And we're focusing today on the natural hazards aspects of this catchment and how our work links with Dunedin City Council's work, and how it's not just flooding and it's not just sea levels, there's a whole multi-hazard sort of approach that must be taken to understand it. So just to start with, this is something that a lot of you will be familiar with from previous iterations of reports, but the understanding of the reclaimed extent of Dunedin and how big it is. So the blue line in the display that people can see the display shows that area of Dunedin which has been reclaimed from the harbour. There's further areas of South Dunedin that have been reclaimed from sand dunes and from low-lying areas. Wasn't it Lake Logan? Yeah, so Lake Logan is part of that as well. I haven't included it because it's not strictly shoreline, but that was all a sort of coastal connected wetland as well. So it's certainly not just a South Dunedin issue, it's all of Dunedin. Our monitoring for sea levels, which goes into national sea level guidance and science projects, comes from Green Island, so you may be familiar with that off the coast of Brighton. We've got a GPS and a sea level recorder, and that wee graph on the side there is just an example of that kind of multi-hazard approach again. So to understand sea level and land and hazards, you need to know what the sea's doing and what the land is doing at the same time. And this wee graph is just showing us a little blip at the start of it is the Kaikoura earthquake, which was captured just after that GPS station was installed on the island. And we can see that everything moved, 5 millimetres sideways. So those kind of hazards, which we're increasingly understanding more about, vertical tectonic movement along with sea level rise, are really important for future planning. Our coastal tidal monitors, we work with DCC to understand erosion at the St Clair-St Gilda dune front, and also what sort of connections there may be with the tidal levels during storm surges and with groundwater levels. I'll go further into groundwater here. So we've got telemetered bores, which most of us are familiar with. Here's one in Kennedy Street. It's just this little doodacky on the side of the road. The tidal levels and the groundwater levels can be viewed on our Water Info website in real time, and they form the basis of a lot of groundwater and modelling and reporting that goes on. So we have got a history of engagement with schools, especially since the 2015 flood. We wanted to make sure that the community of South Dunedin and of wider Dunedin via school students was included in science and development that was going on. So we included students and got them to help dig some holes, understand the environment around them, and that engagement has been a kind of citizen science engagement project to make sure people, as much as possible, see what we're doing to understand the area and feel like they can be part of that. We've expanded our groundwater monitoring network around through the central city and into harbour side. So it's no longer just a South Dunedin groundwater thing. We're thinking about this area up in the central city and up to Lake Logan and the university. So you can see again that blue shoreline, our new, a lot of development going on and planned through here. And we have groundwater monitoring bores and are working with GNS to continue to progress our models and understanding of that. A few more things. Stormwater catchments. When ORC talks about water, it's usually the rivers, the rainfall, groundwater, but we in Dunedin City are sort of reliant on working very closely with Dunedin City Council, and they
work with all this area captured by this white line to model stormwater flood events, and here's a picture of it in the side here. So they've got 7 different catchments. A lot of them rely on pumping stations to keep areas from flooding during heavy rainfall, and there's a complex pipe network under the ground, multiple pumping stations and outfalls. Here's the Portobello pumping station and a picture of the outfall during a heavy rainfall event going out into the harbour. Complicated network of pipes bringing all the water from across the city, all the way from the Ladies in Caversham out to Portobello. The pumping station was improved after the 2015 flood because of inefficiencies in the design, and so there's work that DCC does that we have to keep up to speed with to make sure that we understand that and work that in with any thinking about groundwater. We record rainfall continuously. We've got Musselburgh, and then further out there are other rainfall monitoring stations across Otago, the nearest which ORC manages is up on Swampy Spur. An interesting thing to note is that during heavy rainfall events you'll have a big difference generally between what's on the flat and what's up there. So we've got several rainfall stations. We're hoping to plan a few more through around the hills around Dunedin to help understand how rainfall changes and how flood events might impact different parts of the city. And then furthermore there's the Otago Weather Radar, which is just being installed, and that's going to help us a lot more with our flood modelling and hopefully with planning for significant weather events.
Are you proposing anything that talks to, sorry Gretchen, the Lindsay's Creek catchment?
So flood monitoring for...
So the extra
rainfall that would...
Yeah, so the extra rain gauges will definitely help understand the variability of rain and the response of the Lee's catchment, which include Lindsay Creek. But for the moment, there is no specific plan to add anything, a new recorder in Lindsay Creek. It's got one flow recorder that is at the downstream end of the catchment.
Because it's one that we're concerned about, and it's quality of water and things, maybe, I don't know.
Oh, that's true, yep. Anything else?
I'll just finish here. So the Leith floodplain, again, is part of that multi-hazard aspect of the central city. The big blue area in here goes all the way through towards the Octagon and shows areas that are technically at risk of flooding by the Leith. There's also landslide mapping that we do to make sure we understand what's happening in the steep hill catchments, especially during heavy rainfall. There can be risk of landslide. And our investigations also go into geological work. So the drilling that we did in 2019 to increase the groundwater monitoring network also included geological investigation, which resulted in these maps and better understanding of the geological properties of Dunedin and active faults. And just finally, seismic hazard is another big overarching thing, and I've just got a view down of the Akatori Fault, which is our main, best understood seismic hazard for Dunedin City, but there are plenty of others. And so work is ongoing in mapping active faults at the moment. But that's all of that. No, maybe Kevin wants to sum.
So, Madam Chair, that's just a bit of context for the paper, which is seeking some council direction on how it wishes to continue to collaborate with Dunedin City Council on our South Dunedin harbourside work. And as the staff have set out, there's a comprehensive program of technical work, multi-hazard, covering South Dunedin and harbourside that's been underway for 15 years and is continuing. And it's timely for council to consider how it wishes to continue to collaborate as we start to move towards the adaptation decisions, which are the primary purpose of all of this work that we're undertaking.
Great, thank you. That was a really comprehensive and fantastic presentation. I can see us working really well with integrated catchment management using a similar approach for making it real with communities. Thank you very much. We are going to get into questions, and as we said, we need to choose from one of the three options for engaging with the DCC, and then there's also the recommendation to enable staff to engage with the DCC on that matter, but yet to consider whether or not actually we might want to have some involvement too, perhaps, I suppose. Whether our chair or somebody might like to engage with the DCC at that level too, I'm not sure. Anyway, opening it up for questions. We'll start with Councillor Malcolm, Wilson, then Calvert.
Financial considerations, bracket 25. You've got approximately 50,000 for option 3. You've got an approximate 50,000 additional cost into the LTB. When do you envisage? What year do you envisage that to slot in?
We would envisage that in year one.
Yeah, thank you.
It would need. It's really come to the point now where we're in a position whereby there is some benefit in a co-funded program management role. So as soon as practicable. So yes, year one.
Thank you.
Kate.
Just wondering if we've talked to the DCC about their preference.
Through Madam Chair, yes, at a staff level we have been talking about working together. We've had some staff discussions around, a shared program manager. It's something that I think at a staff level we can see working. Which is why option 3 is feasible, but really the city's waiting for this council to make some decision, including a decision to engage, and that's when those discussions around a preferred option and any other option maybe would come forth.
Okay. Councillor Calvert.
Just seeking to understand why this has appeared to us now after we've had a workshop on the financial bits of the long-term plan. This is the second one today, and I can see that maybe we just ran out of time or something, but are there any more coming? I mean, have we got to the end of the things that will feed into the financial
one next
LT?
Mrs. Gardner might want to answer.
The approach we've taken is that it's a bit of a belts and braces approach, which is in order to move forward with input into the LTP, we need you to make some policy decisions ahead of that time so we have the direction, which is what the integrated catchment paper was about, this paper's about, and there may well be other things. We've tried to capture them all. That's why you've got the Lake Hayes culvert as well. So we've tried to capture those things that we felt needed some formal direction from you before we went about embedding them into the proposed LTP. These are the key things we've identified.
So how do they fit in with... We've had discussions about sort of our level of comfort and our feelings about some of the things.
That's right.
If we
you've already
approve these sorts of things today, do they get set in concrete ahead of the things that we discussed in a workshop that we haven't yet actually had brought to council? Are they there, and then we can't look at dropping them out if we look at the whole thing and think it's too much for the whole thing, or how do they sit with each other?
Well, unfortunately, that's the challenge. We need you to give us that direction so that we know how to treat these things inside of the planning for the LTP. As I said, it's about the braces, but it's important direction from you. And these decisions need to inform the LTP in terms of financials.
So could we make
resolutions today which say something like subject to what we decide
you could
in the long-term plan
yes.
when we are publicly talking about it, because
So
I'm just, I don't think these are necessarily a priority against the other things we've been discussing.
Okay, well, we can talk about that once we get past questions into what the options are in our mind. So,
yeah, sorry, I was really just asking.
No, that's good.
CE whether that was a.
Yep, that's the process. Right, next is council laws.
I understand that although this is within the Dunedin City Council orbit, I'm interested in the legal responsibilities that are employed upon us. So, South Dunedin is probably, I would think it would be the most, yes it would be, the most public face of climate change in New Zealand as a community, and is about to become so. So it's going to be right at the front end. And so therefore I want to make sure that our legal responsibilities are clear to us. Now, I'm a keen person for us taking leadership on this, because from my initial reading, and I could be truly wrong, it would seem that we have a primary responsibility for the management of the environment when it comes to climate mitigation or climate change mitigation. Have we got a legal opinion on what our responsibilities are? Because sooner or later, either the DCC or us are going to come to a disagreement. And one of us is going to have primacy. I'd like it to be us, but I'd like to make sure that we've got the legal argument that asserts that primacy. There's the question. Do we?
We haven't sought a legal opinion around respective responsibilities for these matters. We do have some joint responsibility. So at the moment, it's a function of a regional council under the Resource Management Act, Section 30, to control the use of land for the purposes of the avoidance or mitigation of natural hazards. So we have that responsibility. We also have a responsibility under Section 35 for gathering information and monitoring hazards. So we have those responsibilities at the moment. In respect of South Dunedin, the infrastructure that is controlling the surface flooding is owned by the city. Mm-hmm. But in the long term, the sorts of infrastructure that might be considered would be the sort of infrastructure that would actively control groundwater, and that's a bit of a new thing for councils. The wider issue about where does leadership for adaptation for climate change come from?
Yeah.
Was identified in the Climate Change Adaptation Technical Working Group. We've made recommendations back to the Minister, and the RMA possible reforms, the review has identified that is something that will need to be strengthened and clarified as to where that leadership comes from. So I think at the moment it's probably a bit of a grey area, a bit of a joint responsibility, but hopefully the legal situation will become much clearer with the RMA reforms.
So when are we expecting to see that initial draft?
RMA reforms?
Yeah. But on this matter.
Anyone know?
I don't know that a time frame's been developed.
Committee next year, both parts of the that report going to select two different select committees next year.
We're not exactly sure, yeah. But at the moment, it sounds as though we have got some responsibility, particularly in controlling land use for natural hazards and also monitoring. Yeah,
that's correct.
I guess all I've asked there, Gretchen, is who has the primary responsibility? And I guess what I've received an answer from, which is fair enough, is that hasn't been decided yet.
No, there's no statute you can point to that has a line that says, as a function of a regional council or someone else, to lead the adaptation for climate change. That's missing from statutes at the minute.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councillor Noon.
Thanks, Madam Chair.
I'm not sure who the question's for, but Sharon alluded to additional rainfall recorders and possibly further groundwater monitoring or whatever. As we move towards the adaptation, is there anything else that we would require to inform us or the community or the Dunedin City Council or whoever else to move to that adaptation stage? Are we absolutely complete with the investigation, or is that just really, you could go on and investigate, but are we at a point we know enough to be able to look at adaptation with confidence?
Maybe I can answer that. I think there's certainly enough information at the moment to start framing things up, but it will inevitably be an iterative process, because one of the issues will be what are the triggers for adaptation, and that might require different sorts of measurement. Things like, social or health kind of things. They may not be technical things. So I think measurement and monitoring and adapting that will just continue. I don't think we'll ever get to an end point.
Yeah. So I suppose I asked a question about the involvement with governance. You're confident the time is right now, rather than waiting any longer, doing further work, etc. You're not promoting that. You're saying that really now is the time to have a closer relationship with the city at governance level, and clearly over time you've worked in parallel with the city, with work streams, etc. But you're confident now is the time for governance to have a greater involvement in terms of the decision making going forward on this issue throughout. I'm not just talking South Dunedin, I'm talking Harbourside as well.
This is not a linear problem. You won't get to a point where you move from information gathering to, options identification and selection. It's going to be very complex and involve a kind of circular adaptation sort of thing. I think the sooner that the adaptation discussion starts, and it's sort of starting to head that way now, the better. We do have some joint responsibilities, as we've talked about. So what we're proposing here is, some options ranging from the status quo, which is we act as a information provider to the city, versus another option where you are more involved in the adaptation decisions. And those are some choices for you to make.
Thank you.
All three of those options can be implemented now.
Thanks. I've just got a list, and thanks for your patience and waiting for your turn. We've got Councillor Scott, Hobbs, Deaker, Wilson and Forbes. Yep.
Don't worry,
Scott.
it's a long list, but it's been a long story, and it's not,
it's important.
It's important. The key thing from my perspective is just I'm not getting into the discussion, but just around the options and which model is providing the best value. So my question is when you compare option 2 and option 3, if we were to move into option 3, whether straight away or in the future, will that compromise a technical and RPS responsibilities? Because they're both quite meaty. The technical you've outlined, and the RPS we saw this morning, where there were various factors that had to be considered if you built a hard wall, this type of stuff, like administering the RPS and their technical obligations is quite fulsome. And also I'm wondering, if we go to option 3, is there an automatic, are we compromising those technical, and is there an obligation financially? Are we putting ourselves into a position that we may be concerned about in the future? Is there a compromise? Are there any obligations?
if we got into option
Yeah,
3.
difficult question, but
Isn't it a fundamental
it says that
question?
we would need to have agreed objective scope and shared resources. So it's not just signing yourself up to something on the dotted line today. It's really about talking and collaborating would be my view. But Dr. Palmer?
That's correct. If you were minded to go with option 3, that's just a direction of travel. There's a whole lot of stuff to work out. You know, we've talked about geographic scope today. South Dunedin Future is looking at what we call South Dunedin. We're looking at a much wider geographic area. We're also looking at multiple hazards. That's not something that's fully in that program. So there'd be a lot of stuff, such as what Councillor Scott has raised, and that would need to be worked through if you're going to have a truly fully integrated program.
Thank you. Councillor Hobbs.
Thank you, dear. It's just the same line, but I want to just between option 2 and option 3. When I look at this I really want to know if I'm wrong. When I look at transport issues, as we have it under option 2, sometimes I think there is almost quite a lot of hot air and not much progress. You know, when you've got the politicians only talking at each other, as in connecting Dunedin. Whereas if we had both politicians and a workforce from DCC and ORC with a technical program director, you might be able to tap into things that you might know, but they will know even more of around blessed drains and stormwater, although you do know that obviously quite well. I'm just trying to see which is going to get, I'm really asking your opinion, I suppose, because on transport it looks to me as though option 2 is a bit lightweight.
The benefit of having technical involvement, I suppose, in the process as opposed to a political process.
Well, because we could be
what would be a recommended option?
Doing dikes up into the St Clair.
If you're comfortable there.
So I think there's two things with the options. They both blend the technical stuff, the stuff the staff deliver, into a truly integrated program. Look, we're working very, very closely together. We've got an excellent relationship with the city, and they've been very accommodating on South Dunedin Future. It's been fantastic, but we still haven't integrated our work into their work or vice versa. And that creates some inefficiencies when it comes to, for example, community consultation, for example. So that's one thing with the options. And then the other thing is, to what degree do you want political governance kind of reference steering group across the top? Now, that doesn't take away from the respective individual decision-making of councils, but you start to put that across the top as well. So those are the two things that are different about the options. Okay. Option 1 doesn't have the governance piece, doesn't have a fully integrated program. Option 3 takes you all the way through to fully integrated program, co-funded program manager, director, single unified comms plan, and also a kind of reference steering kind of political element across the top as well.
You're doing all that for 50 grand.
Yep, right. Councillor Deaker.
Yeah, I think this is getting a bit repetitive. I should actually just back off and say the others have asked my question, but not quite. I want to say, first of all, thank you to Gavin and Jean-Luc and Sharon for the quality of this paper and the way it's been presented with the adjunct that Sharon displayed. That's just about been an exemplar for me of how to bring a difficult, complicated, technical topic to this table. I, like Marion, want to explore this joint governance option because I've had experience of connecting Dunedin and tertiary precinct planning group and a few other things which have been city, region, sitting at the same table, almost inevitably with far more staff than councillors, which must be a bugger for staff having to go to so many meetings. And I really want to know what the value is that they add, those combined committees. Because it's hard for me as a councillor, and Kate, you've had the same experience thinking of TPPG. Just what value does it add to having people like you and me and Marion and Andrew sitting at those tables? I want to know from the staff what their preferred option of 1, 2 and 3 actually is.
I think we have asked that, and I think Dr. Palmer very carefully threw it back to us, and I think probably
I know it's an unfair
your question could be
and I know you're
thrown
talking
back.
over me, Madam Chairman, but I haven't quite got to the point. I don't want to see us make a decision which is going to have their hearts sink, saying, oh God, that's yet another meeting every fortnight that I have to go to and sit and listen to.
I think the ball's in our court, though, isn't it, to make it worthwhile as governors, and really that is up to us, and to seize control, to hold of the ball and throw it round as we see fit together with the DCC.
Well, I just have to go.
If it's not effective, then that's our fault.
Yeah, but as we can see from an issue like this and from public transport, they are both quite technical, heavy-duty issues in which the staff hold the info. What they're asking us to do is to react and make decisions and ask good questions and all the thing that good governance people do. I want to make sure that we are adding value, and we do that. I'm going to support option 2 unless the staff tell me that's a dumb idea. I'm certainly not going to go as far as option 3.
Okay. Any comment then? Maybe Ms. Gardner, did you want to say anything?
Well, if I sticking my neck out a bit, I would say that I actually think that the Queenstown model, which is option 3, is more effective than option 2. I participated in option 2. I've participated in option 3. I think option 3 has a greater level of accountability in a way, and I just think it is slightly more successful than option 2 has been in the transport space.
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. I think we all agree with 1 and 2 in the resolutions. I think we're all having problems deciding on whether we want to do 3, and I personally don't think we're at the stage we can do 3 to have a preference. I think what I'm going to suggest is needed, and just from the discussion that's happening, is, and maybe I'm asking staff for the comfort, is if we did 4, which authorises staff and X and Y being councillors, and I don't want to name them yet, to engage with Dunedin City Council to progress development of a preferred option and to report back to council, we would be in a better space. Does that make sense? And I think there's 2 councillors that are needed. I don't know who they are, and I'm happy to have hands put up. I think it'd be great to have you on there, Gretchen. But would that work for you guys? I think this work is really important, that we get to this place before long-term plan and ensure that we know what we are going to have. But I don't think I'm in the space that I understand that priority yet, which one's the right option. And I don't want to pick an option without having those discussions with the DCC either.
I'll second that, Madam Chair.
Sorry, lost my train of thought.
It was a question.
Oh yeah, that's right. The thing was that we started off with hearing that the DCC are looking for our direction first on this, so they're not looking for us to come back to them and say, well, actually we want to, come up to. They want us to come up with what we prefer, and then go to them. So that's what they've said.
Well,
yeah. Councillor Wilson, we can come back to this in the debate in a minute. Councillor Forbes, you've been waiting.
I'd like to put the motion, because I think we're now heading, the last 2 speakers, I think we're heading into debate, and I'd like to put the motion, I'd like to get to it.
If we're having debate, we should all get a chance to.
Yep. We will, yeah.
We haven't, I'm not put the motion, I want to, whatever it is, move the motion, please.
Which motion?
It's on an option, and I want to move option 3. But I want to move this. The first part is that we note the report. And note the, yeah, that's right. And select an option, and I want to select option 3. And I want to speak to that.
Okay.
And we can debate it.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Seconded, yep.
So option 3 makes sense to me. We get involved and we get to bring both organisations to work together on what's an absolutely huge issue. It doesn't have, I don't believe, huge financial or even time commitment obligations at this point. I don't see any of it in here. We need to understand each other well, and this a subject and we need to understand each other's approaches. The Way to Go partnership, which I've been part of since it started in Queensland, it allowed the development of a really strong relationship that came out of a previously dysfunctional and highly problematic relationship. And that was a solution that worked. I mean, it doesn't mean that that we agree all the time or even often, but we bring it to the table and we have a strong relationship. And it works because there's no way of any of the organisations involved individually solving it. They have to work together. And I think there's a lot of scope for the going to get very tough in this particular area of what we have to do, and understanding each other is paramount, and the way to do that is to bring staff and governors together as described in option 3.
Thank you. Councillor Hobbs as seconder. Did you want to say anything?
Yes, very briefly. I strongly support now option 3, and the reason is, and I support 1, 2 and all the other stuff up there, but the reason that I support 3 is because the 2 virtually was just the pollies joining, and politicians, sorry, and that worried me, because when I've been aware and out to meetings in South Dunedin, there is a lot of ill-informed, it always comes around election time, ill-informed solutions to do with border dikes, fingers in, God knows what else. Therefore, I want this discussion absolutely seated, not so much in politics, but in the science that is going to address some of the issues. We've seen the science today. You've done fabulous work. You've also done great communication work. At 2 things I've been at in South Dunedin, you've been there, Luke, surrounded by people all asking you questions and putting up their ideas. And I think it's really good to have the sound working together, yes, at political level, but actually grounded in working together at the technical and intelligence level. Thank you.
Anything else that needs to be said at this point? Councillor Calvert and then Councillor Malcolm.
I just have a question and then I want to talk to it. That last one, is this report back to council before we decide what will be in a long-term plan, or because it's committing ourselves to the money in option 3?
I think it'll be quite a long process to engage with the DCC and both agree work streams, and it's not realistically going to happen before the LTP.
Right.
So I don't think it would be.
Okay.
That would be my thought, yeah.
I think we should be supporting the collaboration with the staff and 2 different, whichever of the TLs and TAs and us want to get involved. I don't know that we add much to the process, but if it's nice that they think we do. I would have some caution in any group that's formed thinking that whoever is on that speaks for us in any way. I'm one who's been on a territorial authority and who hasn't been part of the groups that are formed from time to time to talk to people, and one of the things that can happen is that all the organisations involved, or both the organisations, say it's not up to us. For example, in Dunedin, the cycleways, there was a group doing cycleways, and Dunedin City Council said, oh, it's not us, it's somebody else, and the Transit said it's not us, it's someone else, and everybody, and it wasn't any of those people. You know, our council wasn't making a decision. We were told, here it is, here it's sort of, so I'm a bit wary about...
In terms of reference for those that are involved,
so
it's a
I'm
fair
more
point
than,
when it's politically hot.
I'm more than happy for our people to support the staff and be involved in that sort of endeavour, so long as everybody knows that it's just talking ideas like with a workshop that doesn't involve actually committing anybody to anything or getting the feeling of everyone.
Councillor Malcolm.
As I understand it, this is an existing land use out there, so under the RMA, all we really have to do is probably monitor it. and probably under our regional policy statement, we can probably determine how we instruct the TA to deal with it in the future of any future development. Is that sort of our, say, mandatory roles?
Yeah, that's probably the mandatory do minimum.
Yep, good as gold. Okay. So I just had to clear that in my head because, listen, this is probably going to be the most emotive decision that certainly Dunedin will have in the next, well, and certainly in my lifetime, and I'm saying another 50 or 60 years anyway. So it is actually going to be huge. But I think now if we have the will of the DCC to be in partnership with us doing this, when we're already doing the monitoring and doing the work we're doing, I think it is the time. I have a reservation about when that 50 may be spent, so and whether it will actually end up being 50 or whatever it will be. But this is the time to actually start it. It will be a long process, and if we've got the people that are willing to start that talking, and certainly if that's at a staff level, I think that's where it's really got to start. And then if we're in there to help the guidance of that as well. I'd like it snuck out a year or two, but if the moment's the moment, it's the moment. Thank you.
Councillor Noon.
Yeah, I think that now's the time for governance to step up to the plate collectively and in collaboration with the city. Our roles and responsibilities are complementary. And I also see another strand to the governance role would be to potentially lobby and promote the challenge that we have in the city at central government level. And I know previous governors have done some of that work, but I think that's going to be important going forward as well. So the government would certainly be looking to the city and the region to show a united front on this topic. So I think that'd be an important role as well.
Good point. Very good point. How did you, sorry, just a question while you're speaking on the point 4 about authorises staff to engage with the Dunedin City Council about this, assuming that the motion was passed, or do you see it as something that perhaps...
Would it be okay, staff and the
that means staff Dunedin City Council.
And say maybe you?
That would be good because once again, I think that's showing the right, I suppose, foundation to take the next step. So if we have an informal chat about formalising this relationship,
staff and the chair.
Yep.
Councillor Forbes and Hobbs are happy to add that in. Yep. Yep.
Sorry, John. Yes.
Okay. Right.
I think it should be CE and chair rather than staff and chair.
Yes.
Well, staff means CE, I suppose, but I think it should be at that level, frankly.
I don't think so. I think there's others that know more about it.
Yeah, I think they've been talking.
Okay, we can iron that out amongst ourselves, but yeah. Thank you. I think we've had a lot of discussion around this. So we've got the resolutions there. I think we'll take them
all together.
Yeah, I think so. And in that case, all in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Brilliant. Thank you. Next one then is Lake Hayes. Sorry, the timing's a little bit off this afternoon, but we have got some important policy decisions.
I'm not sure we're doing
Yeah. Yeah, because you've said you're going to do it, but if you can't do it, then you just push it along.
Okay.
Okay, so Dr. Palmer, will you be presenting?
Just me?
Yep, just you. Okay.
You're here, Brave.
Councillor Wilson is just leaving at this point. Councillor Calvert will be back in a minute. But we need to keep on going. So we've got other things we need to do this evening. So recommendations here, you can present in a minute, but what we're aiming to do is receiving the report, noting the activity's estimated cost and time frame that would be required to increase the outlet capacity of Lake Hayes, and just noting the improvement and maintenance works that will be undertaken by DOC. And so there's a lot of noting going on. Thank you, Dr. Palmer. Did you want to highlight some things to us?
No, Madam Chair, I'll take it as read. It just came from a council resolution about a current year annual plan target, and this report delivers that target. It's an information piece on timeframes, activities and costs if the outlet was to be upgraded, and 2 options are identified and have been priced up. Happy to take any questions.
It's not so much questions.
Councillor Hobbs and Malcolm.
It's not a question, mine darling. So.
Okay, Malcolm.
What is our obligation as a regional council to actually do that work, and is it necessarily our role to be doing it?
Not our culvert, is it?
Existing infrastructure it's not our infrastructure. We've had responsibilities around channel maintenance, and we've undertaken work and are committed to continue to keep the outlet clear. State highway. There's no actual obligation to do the work. You could choose to do it, and it's been priced up and described in a way if this council was to do it, but there's no obligation.
Thank you.
Councillor Scott.
If the size of the culvert, or if the culvert was replaced, would that ultimately improve? I've got 2 questions. Would it improve the lake's health?
No, the intervention around improvement of health involves other things, the flushing particularly.
And
does the flushing require a larger culvert?
Not directly. The flushing does introduce more water into the lake, 100 or 200 litres per second. That's a very small amount. In itself, it doesn't require the outlet to be upgraded. If there was an issue around mitigating the marginal increase in lake level at certain times, then there would be other ways of dealing with that.
Okay, and my second question is, if this council was of a mind to fund it, would it be funded by a general rate or a targeted rate to that particular area?
That's a decision you would need to make. It's up to council to decide how it would wish to fund it. There's no work being done around that at the moment. It would come back to the usual things, the tests around benefits and exacerbators and that kind of thing.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Councillor Deaker, Calvert laws are known. Deaker, yep.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask Dr. Palmer's opinion of the non-culvert remedies being discussed in this report, such as increasing the capacity of the channel downstream of the culvert to let water get away more quickly, and to lifting those parts of the Lake Hayes waterway which are badly affected by floods when the lake does rise. They seem to me to be simpler and cheaper options to dealing with this issue. Is that Dr. Palmer's view, or have I got that wrong?
So through you, Madam Chair, the channel maintenance work needs to happen on a regular basis, and that will happen. The Department of Conservation intends reconstructing the floodable part of the track, so that sort of obviates that issue. That then leaves issues around a nursery that is flooded occasionally. There is some community concern that higher lake levels inundate land, and that causes nutrients to wash into the lake. So those become the residual issues that are not addressed by track raising.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Calvert.
Culvert, wasn't it?
Connecting those bits together, I wonder whether we could put in a long-term plan a proposal to have a targeted rate for it. The reason being that if the Lake Hayes people want it enough to pay for it, then that gives us a clear indication of its value. If they don't, the other mitigating things seem to me to mitigate enough of it. And if they answer with yes, we'd love to pay a targeted rate to receive this increased level of service, as we might call it.
Okay, it's an idea. Councillor Laws?
Sorry, was there a question with that?
There wasn't really.
Well,
Finance Director. Can we propose it in the long-term plan was really the question, just as a...
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, the world's our oyster, I suppose. We've heard from Dr. Palmer that we could do it if we wanted to do it, yeah. And we could target rate if the beneficiary is the targeted area.
Yes, yeah. I was saying if we're consulting in the long-term plan, which we are, then that would be an all right method of consultation, just saying, you guys, do you want to pay for this?
It's the same as anything else.
Yes, because we would need to consult on it anyway because you're introducing a new rate.
Yeah.
You know, it being a new targeted rate, so you'd have to.
And we could do that in the long-term plan process.
Define how that's going to work and how much it would be, and there'd be not just on whether you do target rate it, but you can look at other funding options, like whether it's general rate or a mixture or whatever. But the long-term plan would be the appropriate place to do that.
Okay. We have Councillor Laws next.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Thank you. I was with Gavin and others in June of 2020 when we walked this route. And Gavin, I guess the question I'd have of you is that the Friends of Lake Hayes and the QLDC had a view that if the culvert had been built as they originally suggested, which I think was 1.6 metres diameter, but we insisted, that's the IRC, it was 1.3 from memory, then the flushing would have occurred and the flooded would not have. Now, I see that's referred to in the Mitchell-Dace report, I think on page 4. But I guess the question I'd have of you, Gavin, is you know very well in presenting this report that your conclusions are at diametric opposition to those that are promoted by the Friends of Lake Hayes and QLDC. Did they provide you any evidence or any scientific background or argument that went into the Mitchell-Dace report?
I think the answer to that is no, they didn't. What they provided was...
Calibre report.
The Calibre report. What they provided is as recorded on page 4 of the report, which was opinion and views. QLDC staff, upon reading this report, have advised me that the track raising by DOC will address the issues of interest to them.
So they don't support this proposal either now? Is that what your report according to me?
Financially?
Yes, the staff say that they don't support a culvert upsizing because the primary issue, which is flooding of a section of the track, will be addressed through the works DOC are undertaking.
That's a big change. Thank you very much. Thank you for clarifying that.
Councillor Noon, then Forbes.
I had the same question, but I just want to expand it out a little bit. The difference between 300 mil, the size of culvert that was approved in 2002 by the ORC, what impact did that have on lake levels since 2002?
Compared to what?
Well, compared with before 2002. So did it impact on the lake level? Did it lift the lake level?
All other things being equal, a smaller diameter culvert will make high lake levels probably a little bit higher. Just to clarify what happened, Transit at the time wished to replace their culvert. They applied for a consent for a different sort of structure, different sort of materials. In assessing the application, the engineers at the time said that they were concerned that there could be overdraining of the lake, making it bigger. And they sought further information from the applicant through the AEE. That information was not forthcoming from the applicant, and therefore the initial proposal of the applicant for a certain size was downsized by them and subsequently approved by ORC as the consent authority.
By them being the applicant?
Yes.
Yeah.
The onus is on the applicant to decide how big their new structure will be and to furnish an AEE. So it was their decision.
So who was the applicant?
Transit. ORC is a consent authority. It can only go on the information it's provided with. They had the option of coming back with a comprehensive AEE that would have addressed, are you going to overdrain the lake and all the other things. That didn't happen at the time, or at least according to the records I have seen.
So can I just follow that up, Madam Chair?
Yeah.
So there is evidence that the lake is now from time to time higher than what it was before 2002.
Well, I'm not sure there's evidence. I would say that you would infer that there would be. I don't think anyone's denying that. Yeah, I think you would infer that it would be higher. The question is, what's the material effect of that?
Okay, and just a further question, Madam Chair. So there are other mitigating measures being promoted and developed in and around the lake, i.e. wetland, etc. Does the higher lake in any way, shape or form, the higher lake level, in any way, shape or form impact on the wetland project, for example?
I don't believe it does, because they're building for today's environment and the environment of the future. They're not going back to some hypothetical situation that would otherwise have existed if the culvert wasn't there. So they're building it for the lake level regime that exists today. So I don't believe it's having any impact on aspirations around wetland development.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Forbes.
Okay, I've got a couple of questions here, but first, I didn't get the impression from the report that you were diametrically opposed to the Friends of Lake Hayes view. Are you? Dr. Farmer, do you think?
Well, Calibre recorded what Friends of Lake Hayes said to them, and so it was not my place to interfere with any of that. So
I just wanted to clear that up, if that's because we just heard that.
I might have.
Okay.
If I could just say that,
Dr. Palmer?
I'm not saying I agree with what these other parties have said to Calibre. What I'm saying is it was important for me to not interfere and start to change their view of it. They've literally recorded what they were told. Whether I agree with it or not is a different story.
Yep. You don't disagree with it either. You just have no position.
Well, I think, as I've explained, the consenting thing, I've given a fuller description of actually what happened. But it wasn't my place to get in there and start to tell NZTA how they should describe it.
Thanks. Yep. I can't produce evidence of a higher lake, but I've seen that evidence presented in the spreadsheets that Friends of Lake Hayes have. And so I think that shouldn't be said that there isn't evidence of it. I can't produce it here today for you, but actually I probably can if we want to do that. I can get Mike to send it through. But is it correct that there is, my understanding is, and I'd like you to comment on this if you don't mind, Dr. Palmer, is it correct that there's a suite of remediation activities that need to take place together to achieve restoration of this lake? This is what Friends of Lake Hayes are telling me. So it's all very well to say DOC achieves its outcome by raising the walking track, but the community doesn't. And my understanding is that the community's well down the track of doing the parts that it can, and they have raised a lot of money to do do so. A huge amounts of money, and they've done a lot of work in doing that. And it's not just Friends of Lake Hayes. There is also Dr. Mark Schellenberg has collected a lot of data, which we have as well. There is the Wakatipu Wildlife Trust, Reforestation Trust, and there's a wonderful outfit called Mana Tahuna, who have been working on this as well, and they're doing the wetlands. So there's a lot of people working on this all together. Now, the new lake height as it is now, compared to what it used to be, and it has been raised according to all these people, it affects the wetland because the lower the lake, the easier it is to kind of drain. So for the wetlands. So it does affect the wetland, and I know that those people are sitting there waiting for this decision to see what they can do. The Reforestation Trust have told me that they can't continue to plant in the way that's flooding now while this situation is unresolved. So is that your understanding as well, that there are a set of remediation activities that all need to happen, and that the culvert is an integral part of those remediation activities? That's my question.
I'm aware of the different remediation things, but I don't know that this is integral or essential part of delivering any or all of those. It's a separate thing.
If you look right back, a culvert isn't a natural part of the ecosystem, so I don't know. It's the wetlands are now responding to where the levels are, I suppose. And in the past, the levels would have been different again. I'm not sure.
I'd like to engage in an argument.
Yeah.
I want to debate.
I want to debate this issue.
Should we move the motion?
Well, who wants to move a motion? The motions are around noting and receiving.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm happy to move, Madam Chair.
Happy to move, happy to second. Okay. We'll open it up for some debate then.
I do.
Yep. Councillor Hobbs, followed by Councillor Forbes.
Okay, the first thing I'd like to say is that Lake Hayes is a very visible example to the people of Central Otago, but also all Otago, people who go visiting up there, of the ORC's duty of kaitiakitanga. Whenever you put up a notice up there saying, can't swim in here, can't go fishing in here, can't do anything else in here, as we experienced very angry people saying this to us at the Arrowtown thing on fresh water the other day, you're saying that same thing. Secondly, I want to say that everything that I've read, listened to and argued about this says that the restoration of Lake Hayes is based on three things. It is based on flooding it or flushing it, the RO conversion through. This is the first time today I've heard that flushing would require a new culvert, because Schellenberg and Gig argued RO augmentation is worth pursuing. Currently, the outlet performance will limit our ability to get a consent because of the water coming through. So that's sorry, love, I'm hearing stuff that's against what you were just saying. The second thing is that we are talking about two lots of wetland areas. There's the wetland areas up by the public end of the lake, the lake closest to 6, is that the highway that goes up there? Yep. And then there's wetlands being developed and lots of planting. Something like $50,000 worth of planting is going in there at the moment by locally. These people are doing an awful lot locally to correct things. I never heard anyone really complaining about the walkway and getting wet feet was a problem. What to them was a problem was that they had planted there, and some of the plants with rising waters and the water not draining out had led to increasing sedimentation of the lake, which includes phosphorus going in. And that's the whole problem. That's why you're thinking about flushing people. It's the same sort of thing on Rotorua. If you've got sedimentation at the bottom, not as bad as Rotorua's, because that was poor as well, then you've got the ability to let all those, now the science departs me, all those bugs that cause the inability to swim and fish and eat things out of the lake. Nutrients, did you say?
I said midges.
Oh, no. Sorry, it was and that is really, really important to ensure that you reduce it. I'm happy to receive the report. I'm happy to note the activities. I'm unhappy that the 3 makes it look as though this is an easy way out rather than actually dealing to the augmentation from the arrow and the God Almighty, it's a very strange day. Augmentation from the arrow and the increasing the size of the outlet or culvert. Sorry, that was interrupted several times, and I don't know whether I got that through as clearly as I should. But I'm quite I'd happily vote 1 and 2. At the moment, 3 makes me uncomfortable because it's got a kind of a direction in it that says do this cheap way and let's put off. And I don't want to put off.
Councillor Forbes.
Okay, we're only being asked. I agree with all of that, and I'm not going to repeat it. That's not worthwhile. But the community is moving ahead on. It's part of the deal. They need us to accept this, to receive this, and they've been working collaboratively with Manatahuna, the Reforestation Trust to remediate, and they're telling us that they are hampered and slowed down by this culvert being inadequate. Several of us have gone and looked at it and have actually seen it with our own eyes. And I know that's not some scientific report, but I do believe that we don't need anything else to see that is inadequate. As you say, the replanting dies, but also sediment washes into the lake when it goes higher than it should be. And this piece of the work that we're proposing here supports the existing work, the buoy, the sampling work, potential arrow irrigation flushing. And these steps are all integrated, and this is key as well to the remediation plan. And to make these bits work, the lake level needs to be stabilised, which needs to be done with a larger culvert. And all we're being asked to do is to receive this and note it. And I agree that the 3rd one provides an unhelpful direction.
Okay, we do have a mover and a seconder for these particular ones. Councillor Malcolm and then Councillor Scott, and I'm imagining Councillor Laws might be there waiting.
Do you want him to go first?
Yes, please. If he wants to,
Madam Chair, just before you go any further, I would be more than happy if if there was an alternative for 3. In other words, at the moment, I'd struggle to vote for it. I know I moved it, but my view around the culvert, I think the culvert is part of the problem. So I'll just sow that seed right now, and I'll just come up with an alternative.
Okay, but we did just move and second that particular motion, and now you're debating against.
We did ask another question.
Okay. Councillor Lord, sorry. Yep.
And thank you for the opportunity to speak. I have, and unfortunately I can't see you and you can't see me, but I have in my hand the Lake Haze Management Strategy 1995. It's 25 years ago. And in that it says, and I quote, this document reflects the concerns that both councils, the QLDC and the ORC, and the community have about the continuing water problems of the lake and the need to take action to address the resultant decline in recreational fishery and scenic values. In fact, the first algal bloom on Lake Haze was noted in 1969. So that's how long we've known there's a problem with Lake Haze. Now, in a funny sort of way, this particular paper supports the approach that was promoted to us by our senior policy staff.
Speak to your microphone, Mike.
Speaking to your microphone so we can hear you.
In a funny sort of way, can you hear me better now?
We can see that.
Can you hear me better now?
Yes.
Yeah.
In a funny sort of way, so what I was saying was that 25 years ago, the Otago Regional Council and the Queensland Lakes District Council decided on a strategy to address what they considered to be a serious problem, and that was the degradation of Lake Hayes. We have made no progress in 25 years. It is a stain upon this organisation. Now, what are we going to do about it? One of the problems, I guess, is that in any kind of case where there is an overwhelming issue, which is the degradation of Lake Hayes, one of the iconic lakes of New Zealand, you like to find an immediate solution that will solve your problem. And in a funny sort of way, I guess the Friends of Lake Hayes are responsible for that. They've looked at and said, look at that culvert over there. It's not what was agreed initially. It's 1 point, it doesn't drain the lake as much as it should. Let's go and identify that as a particular issue. And now we've got a scientific report, ironically, Councillor Andrew, because here we are talking about science, but when science negates us, we don't want to actually admit that it's there. It says, well, in actual fact, the culvert isn't the problem. Now, they're right. The culvert isn't the problem by itself. The major problems were identified 25 years ago, and we've done nothing about it. This is seriously a stain on our organisation. And it's emblematic of the fact that we don't take our lakes in Otago seriously. Now, all I am saying is, I'm happy to receive this report. I think it's added to the sum total of knowledge. I think it allows the ORC to have the ability to go back to the Friends of Lake Hayes and QLDC and say, and Mark Schellenberg, this is what this says. Here's what our science says. We need to find other solutions. But that's as far as this goes. I'm not going to necessarily die in a ditch today over whether or not we should impose a culvert upon the ratepayers of either the QLDC or the ORC in general. But I am going to say we need this to keep on coming back because we are daily shamed by the status of Lake Hayes and the fact we've done nothing about it. Shames me and it shames all of us sitting around this table. So we need, I'm happy to support 1 and 2, Andrew, leave 3 alone. It might be part of the overall solution. We still don't have a strategy that is going to clean up Lake Hayes. And that is where I will leave this discussion.
Okay. Sensing that removing number 3 might make everyone happy.
Could we hear?
And I don't see too much.
Could we hear Andrew's
trouble with that.
proposal to alter number 3?
So, hey, my apologies. I should have been a bit quicker off the mark. But essentially, what I would withdraw 3 and replace it that the committee support option 6.1 as per the Calibre report, I believe, and for it to be funded by a targeted rate.
This is quite.
We have to go that far?
Quite different from the motion that you put before.
Yeah, I appreciate that. But
yeah, but we can't just do that when you've got to
move right and withdraw the motion.
Of the report.
You'd have to do another one then. Yeah.
That's making a big decision that we're not trying to make.
Well, I think that's the problem.
Can I ask a question?
To make a big
Can I ask
decision
a question and
we're not even required to
clarification
do
in
it.
relation to that, Madam Chair? And my question is to Dr. Palmer. At some point, will we expect, this council expect some type of strategy to be submitted for us to comment on, which may or may not include the culvert, but basically a proposal to actually remedy the lake at some point, because we haven't got that yet, have we?
Well, you have. We've come back with we've got the preferred option, which is the flushing one.
Yeah.
We've been firming up the prices and the time frame around that, and it's being incorporated into draft LTP.
Yeah.
What has happened, though, subsequent to launching that, is the community has picked up a number of other initiatives. So what we need to do is come back to you and paint the total picture, which is everything that's going on, how it all fits together, and that's what we need to do.
I'm going to speak at this point as well that I'm quite uncomfortable that I've had a expert engineer speak to us about some of the uncertainties today, and we're choosing to ignore them. So I feel quite passionate about that perhaps the over draining of this area as well could lead to issues. There's one flag in my mind and only one of them. The other is that we've heard that potentially there may not be too much significant effect of the raising caused by the culvert entirely on its own. So, I think there's a level of uncertainty there, but to leap to conclusions that our own technical experts are wrong and therefore we should support something to be funded by a targeted rate at this point isn't something that I would support.
Yep, 100%.
I'd like to speak to the thing that I seconded, but it seems to have disappeared.
Yeah.
Yes.
I withdrew. I withdrew recommendation 3.
Yeah.
And then he's put another one, which he doesn't have a seconder for at this point.
Yeah. Well,
I'd like to move a motion for points 1 and 2 and ignore number 3 and simply ask Dr. Palmer to come back with updated report on Lake Hayes and this council's involvement.
I'm foreshadowing that motion. We have a motion that's called moved.
Councillor Noon has removed his motion.
This one as well.
That's entirely, that one is gone.
I haven't got a seconder anyway.
He didn't get a seconder for the one that he proposed.
Actually, you can include.
We've got another motion.
But an additional point that we invite a updated report on Lake Hayes and the council's involvement in proposed works.
Just clear. Yep, that's good. 3. What are you referring to? 3.
Well, 3 just simply notes the improvement main works will be undertaken by the dock and the Department Walkway.
Before I second that, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Is there a time on that?
Or maybe ask Dr. Palmer that question.
Sorry?
Is there a time that we can give an update?
This is awful.
So the update is just on ORC's involvement in Lake Hayes.
Well, what Dr. Palmer's telling us, it's all the stuff's in the LTP anyway, so let's actually...
So what are we actually asking for the report on? Are you clear on what the report is, Dr. Palmer?
Well, I was going to bring something back which describes all of the activity being undertaken by different people, jobs for nature stuff that is going on.
And the likely effect, or?
Well, yes, and how that fits together. Council has one activity around water quality improvement, and that is the flushing option.
Yes.
We've incorporated it into the LTP estimates you have seen.
And the strategy refresh this.
And the strategy refresh.
Yeah.
Can I just...
Those are the 2 things you've actually agreed to. Other than that, you haven't agreed to anything further or instructed us on anything further, because this paper today satisfies your last resolution, which was for the feasibility study.
Yeah.
I'm happy to second Councillor Scott's resolution.
Okay, got a seconder.
We need to adjust number 3.
I see.
And,
No,
request Dr.
And add a number 4.
Add number 4.
I thought you were going to put in Dr. Palmer mumble there.
No, it's the improvement and maintenance works that will be undertaken by... No.
And looks forward to the report that Dr. Palmer's going to provide, that he just explained he would provide.
Yeah.
Is that what you want to?
I wonder if you need the report because of the strategy refresh. It just seems to me.
Refresh the... Yeah.
Right, so, the strategy refresh is on the work program anyway, so it's coming to you.
Yeah.
I just get a bit concerned about, there's a ton of reports.
Yeah.
And today's example is we got your report and then
Tony, whatever he was doing...
You don't agree with the advice anyway, so...
Dr. Palmer was doing anyway.
I think we need to try and be efficient around what we're doing here.
Sounds good.
And I'll second that.
Sorry. I'm sorry.
Councillor Forbes, Councillor Hobbs.
I just wanted to ask, dumb question maybe, but surely the bottom of the culvert sets the level of the lake. How can it possibly overdrain?
There's a number of things that set the level of the lake. It's the invert level. It's hydraulic constraints in the channel, because the other thing to bear in mind is that at some point making the culvert any bigger doesn't achieve anything because the hydraulic constraint is the channel downstream. So it's influenced by a number of factors, including where the base level is set. It's not just one thing; it's a number of things.
It can't drain it can't drain below the level of the culvert, surely.
I guess it can.
Yeah, it can.
How
Yes.
can it do that?
No, because of evaporation and other losses, it won't be the only outlet. There will be water leaking out in other places. So if you operate a lake at a lowish level, you increase the likelihood that you'll end up with even lower levels at those times of low inflow and other drainage. It's quite a complicated thing.
Something we're probably not going to solve today.
Hydraulic capacity is also different in a box culvert versus a circular culvert as well because of the shape.
That's right, and that's actually said.
Can I second that and can I speak to it, please?
Calvert Council, sorry. What did
Can
you
I
say?
second it and can I speak to it?
Oh, okay,
But after-
then Council Laws.
Sorry, you're asking me?
Oh, I think you would like to speak, but
it's
Councillor
just that
Calvert would like to speak to her seconding.
Sure. I'm very concerned that we're just walking away from the real issue here, which is trying to improve Lake Hayes. You know, it's really simple, and we're walking all around the lake, but we're not actually doing anything about it. This lake culvert, you're absolutely right, Sarah. We asked for this report, we've got it. It doesn't say what we thought it was going to say. Oh, that's a bit upsetting. It says that the culvert's not going to improve things. Well, that's actually quite a good piece of information to have. But it doesn't address the big issue here, which we've ignored for 25 years, which is how are we going to improve Lake Hayes? If we're going to talk to Gavin about anything, we should actually send him away with his team to go, bring us back a strategy that will restore Lake Hayes as was originally intended in 1995.
So you'll be supporting it?
Right, thank you. Councillor Calvert then and Councillor Hobbs.
I've shared some of the concerns around the table that we've got very excellent staff here who've given us advice, and as Councillor Laws says, the fact that it isn't what we thought it was going to be isn't any excuse for taking it any less seriously. And I think that the way forward we've got now is the right way. I think it also, Councillor Laws, I think it is important to acknowledge that we need to get on to things as soon as we can, and we thought this would take us forward. It isn't taking us to where we thought we'd go, but we have technically been advised about this, and I am absolutely not trying to put my opinion in the place of our much better and much more knowledgeable people on our staff. And I think this is the way forward.
Thank you, Councillor Hobbs, and we'll put it.
I'm sorry, I have real problems, and I really object to saying the science gave us a solution. The science, as this paper is written, did not add up flushing with the departure through the culverts. And I actually take the thing about a boxing versus around culvert, sorry. And that's why I find it difficult to assume that I have the full information to make a good decision. Then that is my problem, and that is probably, sadly, why I will vote against this at the moment, because it nowhere, it doesn't to me give me hope that there is some change being had. So you argue, Madam Chair, that we've been given technical advice, but it's technical advice outside the scope of everything. I'm going to pick up the phone tonight or tomorrow. I'm going to ask Mark Schellenberg and the other people who have done work here, who I equally admire, and say, I've been told that if we put the water in from the RO, it will not cause flooding, and the current culvert will help.
Okay, I think Dr. Palmer, we're getting into a lot of technical analysis ourselves that actually I think probably we should be leaving to engineering experts to have a think about through the strategy refresh myself, but that's okay. Dr. Palmer, did you want to comment on that particular one? No.
Yes, I wasn't saying that the introduction of a few hundred litres a second of extra flow didn't require some sort of mitigation.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is it doesn't require this mitigation. It could require something quite different, including how you time the flushing flow, other ways of dealing with it. So I'm not saying there would be no effect from that. What I'm saying is there are likely to be more cost-effective ways of dealing with it.
Okay, that's good. Sorry, I do want to put this soon because we're getting well and
look, I'm happy to support the motion. I'll just make a couple of comments that I think our with the refresh strategy that's coming through, I'm quite excited to see that, and I think that will give us some action. I think the consent, that the only thing we need to do around a culvert is actually supply the correct consents. I don't believe that's our responsibility or cost at all. And if the Friends of Lake Hayes or those groups want to pay for it, well, let's target rate them and do it. But I think that's further down the track. I think I was the recipient of the effects of the 1969 algal bloom at Lake Hayes, because as a young coxswain there, I think I did get affected, and it's probably still affecting me now. And in reality, we have never swum.
That explains a lot.
Yeah, explains a lot. But in all the time that we've swum Lake Hayes, going there rowing for many years, we never actually swam in Lake Hayes. So it is a historic problem, and it may be getting worse. So great to see the refresh. And the only thing that disturbs me about this whole thing is all we've been asked to do is note, and we're going to do it now, is to note what the Department of Conservation is doing. So well done to the Department of Conservation. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Callagher, Councillor No.
Thank you. I'll be really brief. Look, I understand the passion of the community there. They're very concerned, good on them, so they should be. We have a duty of care to spend ratepayers' money wisely, and I think we have an obligation to listen to our own technical advice when there is so much uncertainty sitting around this project. Because when you look at the $600 and something thousand that are in these estimates, over half of it is preliminaries and consents, and the actual construction cost is only $200 and something thousand. What I'm also aware of is that just actual typical culvert maintenance that hasn't been done, as you would expect, downstream and upstream, would actually change the hydraulic capacity of that culvert. So there are things that very effectively and cheaply could be done, but we need that strategy refresh, and then we will have a total picture.
Yeah. Well done, Dr. Palmer.
Councillor No.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Look, with regards to the technical advice, 2 options were priced, 3 options were discussed. And I just quote, when they talk about the risks of these options, we recommend that these risks be carefully considered and appropriately managed if the project proceeds. So that to me is not a blank no. Yeah. That's a way forward if we chose that option.
Okay, we have the motions. Well, it's one. We'll take them as one. There's 3. We have the mover and the seconder, so I'll put that. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried.
Abstained.
Okay,
Sorry.
thank you. Very good. We are now closing the meeting.
Has 8 minutes,
Thank you.
go.